conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the hearing of the Harwich Conservation Commission for December 16th, 2020. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, and staying warm tonight. And I want to wish everyone a happy holiday as well. Let me read the statement from the Governor's Office on remote participation to start the meeting. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Conservation Commission on December 16, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so via recording on demand on the Harwich Channel 18 website or on our Town of Harwich YouTube page. Okay, well, once again, welcome. And the first item on our agenda is a request for a change in plans for 49 Snowen Road, SE 32-2426. And this is to add a second emergency egress to the upper level of the home as required by the building department. Do we have a representative here tonight for the project?
Yes, good evening. Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. As you just stated, the plans were approved by the commission. An order was issued, and subsequently the plans and architectural drawings were submitted to the building department. It was determined that the second means of egress was not sufficient to meet the building code. So the architect went back to the drawing board and added a second landing and set of stairs off of the north side of the building, which then brings them out to the driveway area, and a short length of pervious walkway was added along the back side or the front side of the house to lead out to the parking area. Because this is in the no disturb zone, we know the importance of reducing or maintaining the amount of coverage as we discussed at those previous hearings. So the stair and walkways were shortened along the southern side of the house. This results in a further reduction of coverage within the no disturb zone. With that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have a summary for us tonight?
Yep, pretty brief. I recommended this as a change in plan. Because it is in the 0 to 50, I didn't feel comfortable doing it administratively or just as a field change. I thought the commission should know what's going on in the 0 to 50. So it is a reduction in coverage by 22 square feet. And I would recommend that you would approve this plan as a change in plan to make this the plan of record. That's it.
All right, that's simple. Thank you. All right, let me go through comments from the commissioners, and I'm going to take you as I see you on the screen, so that means Stan, you're first.
I have no comment on this. I'm fine with it.
Okay, John?
Yes, I'm with Stan on that. I don't see any problems here. I'm fine with it.
Can you boost your volume a little bit, John?
I'm sorry, is that better?
That is better, yep.
I agree with Stan. I have no comments. I'm fine with this.
Okay. Let's see. I think I have Ernie next.
Yeah, just a point of curiosity. Is this going to be rental property?
No, it is not.
So did they give you a rationale for the second egress?
I didn't have any direct contact with the building commissioner. I know that they had in that northwest corner, they had some windows on the street side that acted as an egress, second form of egress. The applicant changed the shape of the room and the configuration, added some bunk beds along that wall, which shifted the windows from the west side to the north side, which is a huge drop-off, and lost their second means of egress. So that's how it was explained to me from the architect.
Okay, that's fine. No, I have no other questions. Thanks.
Okay. Carolyn, are you on?
I am on, and I have no questions.
Okay. So Jim, I don't think you've joined us yet. Okay. And Mark is out tonight. So myself, I have no questions on this. So I'll ask for a roll call vote. All those in favor for the request for a change in plan, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. And I'll start with Stan.
Well, do we have to make a motion for this?
Oh, we do. Sorry about that.
So I'll make that motion to approve the request for a change of plan for 49 Snowen Road for the second emergency egress.
I'll second.
Seconded by Carolyn. Okay, now we're back to the roll call. Thank you, Stan.
You're
All
welcome.
those in favor, say aye. Stan, you're up.
Stan is aye.
John?
John Ketchum is aye.
Ernie? Ernie, you're up for a roll call vote?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Yeah,
Aye.
I'm aye. Thanks.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night. Next, we have a request for determination of applicability from the Harwich Conservation Trust for 75 Kendrick Road, map 108, parcel R1-2. It's a proposal to change a trail route. Let's see, we have Tyler here tonight to give us a summary.
Yes, hello, Brad, Amy, and all the rest of the commissioners.
Hi. Do you want to give us a brief summary, Tyler, on what you propose to do?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to appear here tonight. As you know, HCT has owned the Pleasant Bay Woodlands property for several years now, and we're finally at the point where public access is a possibility. So at this point in time, we have two separate accessible trail loops for folks to walk on. The total length of the trails is about a mile. These two trail loops are separated by a sand borrow pit area, which is about 300 feet linear. And there was a historic cartway which crossed the top of the borrow pit here, and primarily for public safety reasons and for an improvement of the user experience on the property, we'd like to reroute the trail, off the existing borrow pit area about 15 to 20 feet north, which puts it in the 50-foot no disturb. And again, the reasons for this are primarily for public safety and just to increase the public enjoyment of the property. So the
right.
total, I'm sorry, Brad.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, the total length that we're looking at here is approximately 250 feet.
Okay. All right, Amy, do you have a summary for us, please?
Before I do my summary, Tyler, can you go through a little bit about what that work is going to be exactly, as far as vegetation removal as well as any minor grading, and just how you're going to accomplish that, please?
Yes, thank you, Amy. So we're looking at establishing a new adjacent unimproved footpath, and we're looking at cutting about a dozen or so pitch pines, 2 to 3 inches in diameter, and some other vegetation. We're hoping to establish a new approximately 3-foot wide footpath through the subject area. There would be one area where some minor regrading would be needed. We would try to do it with all just native material on site, which is a lot easier for us. We would like the opportunity to establish a new line of split rail fencing to redirect people onto the new path and to keep them out of the borrow pit area, where someone could easily slip and fall down the slope. So, and there will be appropriate trail signage. At such point, when we're considering more educational signage, we would also like to add some educational signage, just a simple post, numbered post, which would correspond to a number in a brochure, educating folks about vernal pool habitat.
Okay, so my questions or comments, I guess. I've walked the site a few times, and now that it's open, I would encourage people to go and check it out because it is beautiful, and you can take a look at the kiosk, which tells you a little bit about the history of the parcel. So getting to this point, you're asking to move a section. Well, I would say, I mean, it wasn't an official trail, but obviously people had been walking and using that area. The area that people have been walking and using is really close to the edge of a drop off of a borrow pit, which is used for an active, privately owned cranberry bog. So I totally understand the desire to move it a little bit farther away for safety reasons. Pretty much, I mean, there's not been a site survey done for this. I didn't think it was necessary, so I didn't direct HCT to go that route. It is pretty clear that it is, no matter where it is now versus where it's going to be, is probably in the 50-foot buffer zone to an isolated wetland. There was I don't know if that's certified as a vernal pool or not. I know that there's another one there is a vernal pool on the property. When I checked natural heritage today, it did not show that this particular wetland that you're in the buffer zone to is vernal, but given the the area, looking at it and knowing that there's a lot of vernal pools in the East Harwich area, I wouldn't be surprised. But that being said, I think what you're asking to do is fairly benign, and especially if you do it by hand, no earthwork being done by any machinery. Try to meander the trail through there's a little stand of pitch pines. As Tyler said, 2 to 3 inch diameter at most, so very thick in spots. But we consider trees essentially about 4-inch diameter or greater. And I think you could installing the split rail fence, albeit potentially in the 50-foot buffer, I think for safety reasons is, where you're putting the split rail fence is in an area that's really devoid of vegetation, from what I understand. I
That's
think
correct, yes.
I think that's an appropriate use of a split rail fence in that area. And I mean, I walked it. I don't know if the entire 250 feet is, I think it might be less than that you're in the in the 50 at least, to the isolated wetland. Maybe within the 100, your total length is 250. So what I do want to ask, and I'm sorry I should have brought this up to you in conversation, is when you're operating in the 50-foot no disturb zone, we kind of wonder if you looked at alternatives in terms of, is there an alternative location to put this trail? And that's my other than that, I would recommend approval of it, but I do want to clarify, I would like a little clarity on that, how you vetted this location.
Sure. So we looked further up to the west, and we concluded that it would also fall within the 50-foot no disturb. And there's a very steep embankment going down to the cranberry bog. So that was much less desirable. Further to the north, we run into similar issues with very steep slopes, albeit not within 100 feet of a wetland, but it almost puts us so far to the north that we're not achieving our goal of connecting the two loops as seamlessly as we might like to. So it's a relatively short section of trail. It's where the two loops kind of converge the closest. So it feels like sort of a natural area where they might link up.
Thank you, Brad. I have no further questions or comments.
Okay. All right. I've got a question for you, Amy, before I go further, and that's it. Apparently, this is requesting a variance, and is the variance for just a split rail fence, or is it for a change in the footpath? I mean, the property is certainly entitled to maintain a footpath. So, what is the nature of the variance, and how does that connect with an RDA determination? Because we don't see very many variances under RDAs.
You can request a variance under an RDA. And in terms of the extent of the variance was for both activities, both the moving of the trail as well as the split rail fence. You can treat them as separate activities if you want in your motion. But under an RDA, you can grant a variance. It was my call to have them file the RDA as opposed to the notice. So if that is in conflict with what you think should have been done, I apologize. And we can rectify that. But given the small amount of work that I thought was going to occur, that was my judgment. So.
Yep. No, I don't really object to the vehicle. I think it makes sense to have this not have a very large permitting review load. But yeah, it just wasn't clear, because if they're just changing the path, does that really need a variance? Because they have a path and they're entitled to have a path. So is it for just the change in path?
The path itself now, if you go to that section, is not, you wouldn't necessarily, you'd think it might just be the top of a sand borrow pit. You wouldn't potentially see some of the area as an actual path. And plus the property is now public, but it has not been technically open to the public until yesterday. So the previous path is really, it was before on private property. It wasn't really a public path. And again, I feel like what's there now is really ill-defined as a path. So.
Okay. All right. And your interpretation is that even though there is a path, that a variance is still needed because of the change in the work to be done. We couldn't just view this as, okay, they have a path, they're entitled to modify it.
I don't think so. And it is getting a little closer to the wetland than what's currently there. So, plus they're taking down vegetation. It is a new path, put it that
Right.
way.
Okay.
That's how
All right,
I view it, but I don't think it's going to have any adverse impact.
Right.
If done
All right,
by hand, very sensitively.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for that clarification. All right, let's go through comments from the commissioners. I'll start with Stan.
Yeah, Tyler, a few questions. One was the couple of stakes there along where you're putting in the path, where they were marked the easement. Was that the property line? And if so, was in effect what we were calling the path at the top of the sand pit really outside of your property?
Yeah, great question, Stan. So the 4x4 posts that are out there now,
Right.
yeah, they're actually marking the limits of the borrow pit, the sand rights that our neighbor has on our property. So our property does go down in that particular area. It goes down to about the bog edge. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So just to clarify, how much of a split rail fence, I saw at the beginning there, in the
Yep.
sand area there, maybe 4 lengths, I guess. 4 or 5 lengths you're putting in, or not the whole
Yeah.
length?
Yeah, I think that's about right. There's some areas of loose sand, especially at the top, where the top of slope is very narrow,
Right.
where we wouldn't want any fencing.
Okay. So where you're gonna go into the wooded area there, where I kind of was envisioning the path, I saw the red ribbons and everything. There's a little bit of, in the beginning at least, I didn't walk the whole section there, but there's some areas that you're gonna have to kind of, as you say, grade to try and level it out, or just smooth it out. I mean, so that won't be too dangerous either for people to walk as well, right?
Yeah, the one area in particular, Stan, where the path kind of dips down by
Right.
a larger diameter oak, which of course we don't want to cut, and we will not cut. So we kind of want to grade around that tree and also keep the path out of the limits of the borrow pit, because our neighbor does have sand rights on it. So
Right. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, John, you're up.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, John.
Hi, Tyler. Nice to see you. And I went out with Amy for the site visits today, and really is a lovely property. I had never been in there before. But I got to say, I'm confused by this. So I'm going to ask some detailed questions just because I don't quite get it.
Okay, no problem.
For one thing, the way there's very little room on that ridge. I mean, it's almost like pictures you see of people crossing the last ridge on Mount Everest to get to the peak. You know, it looks almost dangerous. Of course, it's not. I'm exaggerating, but my question is really about the sand pit. It's like it's a very steep slope going down to the sand pit, and I'm just wondering how stable any of that is. That is, as more sand gets taken, this is an active bog, presumably, and somebody has sand rights, so they're going to be taking sand. It's a very narrow peak between the sand pit and the vernal pool on the other side, if that's what it is. So I'm just wondering how durable any trail up there really is. So that's one of my questions. Maybe you want to take them one at a time, or shall I just move on and then you can answer all of them?
Well, I'll do the best I can. You can continue. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so then I'm looking at this this map that looks like it comes from, it's book 668, page 62, presumably from the Registry of Deeds.
Yes.
And it shows, I mean, it's pretty clear what you're trying to do is connect one path shown on there to another path shown on there. And the other path shown on there goes across the property line. So is that correct? You're trying to connect up to a path that actually goes out of the conservation property? And there's a reason I'm asking that question, which is, why wouldn't you just avoid the whole issue by, I mean, that cartway goes directly down to the edge of the bog. Why wouldn't you just go on the lower side of the sand pit and connect up with that and avoid the necessity of carving out a path there, which, I mean, I was looking at that and it looks, to me, it looks difficult to make a reasonable path there with a light touch, which is presumably what you're trying to do. I guess those are my questions. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, without having the map in front of me, it probably does cross the property boundary to the adjacent parcel, which we also own. There are two parcels there that were acquired over several years. There's a 9-acre and then a larger parcel, which is 39 acres. And to answer your question about establishing a path further to the west, we did look at that, and if you are down by the bog, if you keep walking past the borrow pit area, you'll see there's a very steep sand slope, which is completely denuded, and this clear sand was taken there from the path in the past as well. And by necessity, the path would have to come down through that area because of adjacent red maple swamp and white cedar swamp habitats. And again, that would be within the 50-foot no disturb as well. To answer your question about establishing a path at the top of the borrow pit, I certainly think a trail there would have sustainability for at minimum 10 to 20 years. Our neighbor is not actively harvesting a lot of sand from our property. There are several borrow pits where Brian could take sand from. So he's not just limited to that one. I think if you consider the vegetation growing at the bottom there, you can see that the area hasn't been disturbed by heavy equipment in a number of years. So given the size of his bog operation, I don't think his demands for sand are terribly great, at least at this moment in time. And we do have, I don't know, even where the top of the pit is now, there's some room for him to remove sand without further destabilizing the bank. These are all ancient rights on our property as well. So I don't know how well that answers your question, but that's what I got.
Okay,
Are you
thank
good,
you.
John?
Yeah, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
John.
right. Ernie, you're up.
Yeah, one question, Tyler. You mentioned that you were going to be putting a split rail fence along the top of the borrow pit. Is that right?
Yeah, especially where the connecting trail would head along the top of the slope there. That area in particular, so people do not walk along the top of the borrow pit. That's right, Ernie. Yep.
And how far is that from the vernal pool that we're looking at?
It's about 50 feet. There's a little bit of fringing wetland habitat. Amy's nodding her head.
Yeah. All right, because we do have a requirement that there be no new structures within 50 feet of a wetland.
Okay.
So that would be problematic from my perspective.
That's why they're asking for the variance. So just to let you know, you can
okay.
grant it if you see the need. So
Yeah. All right. I have no other questions then. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Carolyn, you're up.
I have no real questions. I respect the Conservation Trust's opinions on the best place to put this. I think as the Conservation Trust and as the town acquires property, we have urged the Conservation Trust to allow passive recreation through the area. And I think this path and probably this fence is appropriate. I would hope that it's not going to be any wider than 3 feet, you said?
Yeah, 3 feet as designed. Yes, that's correct,
Okay.
Karen.
So I think it's necessary to achieve the purposes that they want, that are beneficial to the town and the appreciation.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Carolyn. Jim, are you on now?
Yep, I made it. Was able to log in finally.
Oh, good.
So yeah, I've walked that trail quite a few times. And, you know, I see the desire to walk through that area. You get the view of the bog and whatnot. I guess my only question would be, is there the possibility to stabilize the bank of that borrow pit, or is it gonna be actively mined for more sand?
We haven't looked at that yet because these rights were pre-existing to our acquisition of the property. So they may conflict with the pre-existing easements that are on the property.
Yeah, I understand. So it's an easement. So you may not have any control over that. So I could see if it was, you know, aggressively mined, then a lot of that ridge would collapse eventually, but it doesn't really have much to do with the trail. That would just be an unfortunate occurrence. So yeah, I don't really have any issues with your plans for the trail. So that's all.
Thank you, Jim. And myself, I think the only discussion point really is the variance. I think it's a good concept, and you know, after over 10 years in the commission, my appetite for variances in the 0 to 50 is just about gone. But I think there is a purpose for variances, and in this case, there is a very strong public good that would come out of this, as well as minimal impact to the resource areas. So I don't really have a problem with that. So I'll ask if there are any comments from members of the audience.
If I just may add, if you are on a cell phone and you need to hit *6 in order to be unmuted, and if you would just identify yourself when you speak, that would be very helpful.
Yes, hello, this is Patrick Otten.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. I'm in a butter and also walk those trails daily. I guess my orientation is 2 comments. One, with a mile's worth of trails that exist in 2 different loops, why do those 2 need to be connected? Especially across this area that is eco-sensitive. So that's the first question. And then in my own personal perspective, I would prioritize nature over people. You know, as we continue to grow and develop, we lose wetlands, we lose vernal pools, and I think that's a priority for me. But that's who I am, and that's why I exist here. So those are my 2 comments. I guess I can add a third. The trails are new; they've been recently installed, and the clearing work has been done to take the trail surface right down to subsoil level. So you can walk those trails now, and there's not even a leaf on the trail to prevent erosion or runoff. So that's a concern of mine. If the trail across the top of the sand pit is also treated in that manner, what what factors are going to be put into place to prevent erosion and of that area. Okay? So thank you.
No, thank you for your comments, and I'll ask Tyler to address the first question on orientation of the trail, and then also on the erosion question as well.
Sure. I guess if there are specific erosion concerns within the 50-foot, I would defer to the commission on guidance on that. If this project is permitted. And as far as having trails, I'm not sure exactly how to address Patrick's concern, except to say that a trail which has a layer of organic material on the top is actually going to become quite muddy and be less sustainable over time. And what we try to do with our trails is to not create a gully through the landscape, but rather a trail that drains properly and is not flooded and has a sustainable base of material.
Mr. Chair, may I weigh in on the erosion instability?
Yes, please.
So maybe if it was amenable to the commission and the trust, because when you first do create it, of course, it destabilizes a little bit until it becomes packed down a bit. We don't typically allow this, but maybe a one-time application of a fine-ish layer of native mulch in those locations that it is steepest or more unstable, maybe that would be appropriate. I've seen it, you know, we have used it in cases to help erosion, but it would be a one-time, you know, initial application.
All right, thanks, Amy. I know myself, I don't think I would favor the introduction of mulch in the 0 to 50. So I wonder, Tyler, is there an active process for stripping down that topsoil, or how does it happen just through foot traffic?
It mostly happens through foot traffic, to be quite honest with you. Our typical process is to remove the leafy material and the fine organics that are raked up along with them from the top of the trail to help define the trail and to keep it to a discrete width as opposed to some wider area which would have more impact. Usually we're not adding any kind of fill to our trails, especially on a flat surface. In the area where a small amount of regrading is needed, I think we could get material from the borrow pit, which doesn't have any vegetation growing in it. That would be relatively easy to do, bringing in any material from off-site.
Okay, and I guess, Amy, did you get the question on the orientation? Do you think there was the answer was suitable for that? I'm not sure it was. I haven't been out there, so I don't have a great sense of, you know, that change. I'm just thinking
I
the
was
answer.
I was honestly a little confused by the question.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if Patrick can reword it or state it again, I could try to. I am looking at on my other computer. I am looking at, you know, the assessor's map that you provided of the area, and I've walked the area numerous times. So maybe I can try, Patrick, if you don't mind.
Certainly, thank you. So again, there are two loops, one loop down the roadways to the east, and then another walking trail loop to the south.
Yeah.
They currently are independent loops, and the request tonight is to put in this reroute on the trail so that the two loops are joined at the sand pit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So are you asking if there's another, well, one, are you asking Why do they have to be connected? Or are you asking, can they be connected in a different location?
The primary question is, why do they have to be connected? Why not just two loops? And you know, we're not worried about erosion. We're not worried about buffer zones or vernal pools or possible borrow from the pit and eventual collapse. I just wondered, you know, ask you the first question, why do they need to be connected?
Okay, so that would definitely be a question for HCT because it's their application.
Mm-hmm. Any response, Tyler?
I'll just say that it's the narrowest point where we can intersect the two paths. It would allow for a longer walk on the property without sort of retracing your steps. Whereas with the two loops independent of each other, probably many people will not walk both loops during one visit. And as you know, others have mentioned, there's a nice view from the top of the slope there over the bog, which is not achieved really elsewhere. So, you know, that is our request. We respect that others have different opinions, so we will defer to the commission. And thank you.
Okay. All right. I think I'm going to ask for a motion, and then we can, under discussion, bring up some of these details that we to work on if we need to. So, does someone want to make a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the Harwich Conservation Trust's request for determination of applicability to reroute the trail at 75 Kendrick Road. And apply and install a safety fence.
I'll second.
Okay,
That
seconded by
motion.
John. So under discussion, I do want to ask Amy over the actual ruling under an RDA for this. Is it a 2? Is it a 3? Do we have to call out the variance?
I would call out the variance and maybe amend your motion to include granting of the variance for however you want to word it, either the rerouting of a trail, or in my opinion, it is the creation of a new segment of trail and the installation of split rail within the 50. And it is a -3 because regardless of it's in the 50 or 100, it's a buffer zone project and not actually in the resource area. If it was in the resource area, it would be a -2. So it is a -3, but I would recommend amending your motion to include saying that you approve the variance.
Thanks, Amy. Would you follow that up with Carolyn?
I would like to amend my previous motion to approve the trail relocation. I think it's a relocation, but the trail relocation and split rail fence with a -3 determination, and grant the variance to allow them to do this.
All right. John, can I have your second again?
I'll second that amendment.
Thanks. All right, so I guess, are there any conditions we want to attach to this? For me, I do favor letting the trail be the trail and not introduce material, or at least in the 0 to 50. I don't know if folks have any thoughts on that, or if they have any ideas for conditions.
I would just recommend that you condition that all work is done by hand, no machinery. That material that is moved around has to be native and from the site. And that to the greatest extent possible, the trail slightly meander to avoid to the maximum extent possible removal of vegetation.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Any further comments by commissioners?
Will there be any check on this to ensure that it is not eroding?
I'm
I would
sorry, is
say
that a
we-
question for me?
I said, how often will you check this to make sure it is not eroding?
I mean, we check our trails at least monthly, if not twice a month.
We can burden Amy with a site visit a year from now and have her go out and take a look at it too.
Yeah, burden me. It's so tough.
Yeah,
Walking trails.
we'll put that in as a condition as well.
It means I don't
Okay,
have
we'll
to
do,
be in the office.
right. All right, then, we'll do a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay, starting with Stan.
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ernie,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much for a very good discussion.
And thank you all for your time. Much appreciated. And we look forward to working with you many more times in the future.
All right, thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a request for determination of applicability for 6 Happy Way, map 63, parcel A42, a proposed addition to a dwelling. We have a proponent here tonight to represent the project. Well, it looks like
Wayne,
Mr. Tavares
hear
is
you.
speaking, but we can't hear you yet. Your mic is on green, but we still can't hear you. I'm not sure why.
Check your volume. No, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Yay,
Okay,
yes.
coming in now. Yep, any way to increase it a little?
No, that's on max. Can you
All
hear
right.
me? Am I,
I think that'll work.
okay.
Please
All
go
right,
ahead.
I'll try to speak as clearly and crisply, make myself heard. I'm here for John T. Bear, 6 Happy Way and the O'Donnells on a property that has an existing house and it's across the street from Auntie's property. And forgive me today for being on screen, my first go-to meeting. All the other towns I represent in have Zoom. So one time, early stages of Zoom, playing around with these controls, I zoomed myself right out of the meeting. So I didn't want to take that chance here. As you can see, there are some features. Anyhow, so we're at 6 Happy Way, have an existing house, and Sean T. Bear would like to build an addition to this house. 16 by 22 is the addition. It has to be placed on sonotube. And in discussions with Amy, she thought that because it's between 75 and say 80 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland of Mount Rainey's Pond, that it was an RDA request. So the only thing she asked for is that mitigation with a 2-to-1 basis. So the 16 by 22 addition is 352 square feet. Therefore, it calls for 700 remedying mitigated planting. So without further ado, if I can hopefully bring up this plan. Guess I hit screen. Is that correct?
I just made you a presenter, Wayne, so it should come up in a minute.
Oh, okay.
So if you,
Oh.
yeah, so now if you hit screen,
Yes, I did.
share,
Do you see this? No?
No, but they do all have both electronically and paper copies of your application if you
Okay.
can't get it. We went to the site today.
You did. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't bring it up. Amy, do you have it? By the way, can you bring it up on the screen? I work with that sometimes. Amy, can you hear me?
I don't know what happened here. Okay.
I'm here. I apologize. I'm having some difficulties. Let me see what I can do. Hold on one second. I do have Dropbox up. You just want the site plan?
Yes, just the site plan. That'll do. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry about that. My dog is very needy. She was crying to go out. Let's see. Oops, wrong one. Hang on. I'm getting there. Can you see it?
Yes, I do.
All right, let me scroll. How's that?
That's good. Thank you. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so as I just mentioned, over here is flags 4 and 5 that is across the street from Happy Way for Harwich Pond. This 74.6 feet is the closest approximate distance existing house. Number 6 is the existing house, deck, so forth. The proposed addition is cross-hatched, is equal to 352 square feet. So work here would take place up the back. There's a driveway on the other side of the house. Materials would be dropped off and the addition would be built in this area. The addition is built on sonotubes. We don't expect any machinery here. The sonotubes will probably be put in by hand or by a mechanized auger, drill them and set them in place and then pour them. So that's the extent of any excavation, no grading, no changes of topography is being called out for. In exchange for that, mitigation in this area is called for at 2 to 1. So I have stayed in the 100-foot buffer and have done this planting bed. I don't think my pointer, can you see my pointer? Yes, no? No,
No.
probably.
Oh,
Okay. So anyhow, this area that Amy is now pointing to, what is an area here that I have come up with 710 or 712 square feet. Could you scroll a little lower, Amy? A little bit more. The plant schedule.
Oh, okay, hold on.
So we have a plant schedule here and the shrub area is 712 square feet. I divided by an average of feet on center and came up with 29 plants. I have a table here, botanical names, common names, spacing, and area of coverage. So they came up with 31 actual plants instead of the necessary 29, and it covers 754 square feet using formula for coverage. And so I think we have tidily come up with a proper use, placement of mitigation plants. Hoping you allow the project. Some pictures are shown here. Some of you have seen the site, and picture that's directly to the right, top of plant schedule, shows the house from the road, shows the steepness of that slope to the road. So these plants not only serve as wildlife habitat and as native plantings, but as erosion control. So it's put in the right place and appropriate project. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to ask questions. Thank you.
all right, thank you. I'll ask Amy if she has any summary comments for us.
Sure. This is across the street from a very small pond, Aunt Rennie's Pond. And it has an associated bordering vegetated wetland, which is, that area is pretty dry right now because we're in a drought. But the flags are there. And this is still within 50 to 100, so it does require a 2-to-1 mitigation. I like that it doesn't require any excavation, that it's just on sonotubes. And I think, you know, anything from the road is having far more impact to the wetland than this addition will. So, and I think the plants are appropriate for the location, and I agree that they will help with runoff and erosion control on the site. I would recommend approval with a -3 determination, with the conditions of no fertilizers or chemicals applied, which if you go to the site, they're not doing that. It's very just native, you know, natural Cape Cod lawn on the site. And the condition that roof runoff go into a drip, you know, a French drain or a dry well. And
All
that's
right,
it.
thank you, Amy. Okay, let's have comments from the commissioners, starting with Stan.
No comment, Brad. I kind of agree with Amy's comments.
All right, thank you. John?
Yeah, no comments either. Looks good to me.
Okay. Ernie?
I'm fine with this. No comments.
All right, Carolyn?
No comments.
Jim?
I'm good with this one also.
All right, thanks. Thank you all. Any comments from members of the audience? All right. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve the request, the RDA, the request for determination of applicability for Sean Thiebert at 6 Happy Way, map 63, parcel 842.
Okay, can I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Stan. We'll go for a roll call. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Starting with Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Jim. Jimmy, still on?
Aye.
All right, myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for allowing me to talk to my 12th out of 15 towns here on Cape Cod. Promise to do a better job with GoToMeeting next time. Happy holidays.
No, you're perfectly welcome, and we're all very envious of the chair you're in there. It looks like a very comfortable chair.
Yeah.
And it is. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thanks, Wayne.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 2 Quezon Lane, map 7, parcel A50, proposed removal and reconstruction of a single-family dwelling and associated site improvements. Do we have a representative here?
Sean, we can't hear you.
There we go. Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering. With me is Katrine Higgins from Wilkinson Ecological, representing the applicant. If you remember at our last meeting, the majority of the commissioners were satisfied with the project and that they met the performance standards. There were some suggestions and comments from Amy and Brad. We took those suggestions and comments back to the applicant, to the owner, and I'll talk about those in a minute. We continued to today, as we were scheduled to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The zoning board hearing has been continued to late in January so that we can meet with the neighbors to address any of the concerns. The majority of the concerns were with the garage that is outside of the buffer. And so we'd ask that we'd like to close this hearing, and should we need to make any changes in the future, that we'd come back. But the majority of those comments were about the garage that was outside of the buffer. The suggestions that were made, Amy had suggested 3 cedar trees be included within the mitigation area. Those have been added to the mitigation planting plan. Brad had made comments about trying to push the house back further. We looked at reconfiguration of the septic. Unfortunately, we could only push the house a foot back from where it is before we got into the setbacks of the soil absorption system and the setbacks from that to the garage and then to the northern property line. But we did move the house back 1 foot, which yielded a net decrease of coverage within the 0 to 50 of 67 square feet. We've also reduced the lawn area by another 100 square feet and added another 100 square feet of mitigation plantings. So we hope that can somewhat address your concerns, Brad and Amy, and we'll open up for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. All right, Amy, do you have a summary for us?
Okay, so the last time the commission did ask if the home could be moved a bit farther back, with the design of the house that they wish to have, as well as the septic, they could only move it back a foot. They added some mitigation in the cedar trees as we suggested, and I think that, you know, they'll be small to start out with to try to give them a good chance. They're proposing to remove 1,000 square feet of lawn, and this is a bit more than we were proposing last time. The commission really wanted to, you know, we're still seeing that as mitigation. So just as a reminder, there is less hardscape than they're proposing less hardscape in the 0 to 50 than there currently is, but there is more in the 50 to 100. They are required to do 2,352 square feet of mitigation, and what they are providing is 2,513. That's composed of the conversion of lawn to native plantings, removal of invasives, and the planting of natives, and enhancing the small dune at the toe of the revetment, which I think is very valuable. Let's see. Yes, my recommendation is approval for it. If the removal of invasives and planting of natives was really their only mitigation, then I would not think that's sufficient, but I do see the value in the removal of lawn, converting to some native area, doing the invasive removal and converting to native. And I see the real value in trying to enhance that small little dune area, even though they do have a rock wall there. So combined with less structure in the 50 and a little bit farther back than what's currently there. And I think the biggest win for this project, provided it's complied with, is no fertilizers or chemical application within the 100-foot buffer. I think this project would have a net improvement on the resource, and I would recommend approval. Oh, and I would also recommend the patio in the 50, if possible, be pervious, or at least have some drainage.
All right, thank you, Amy. Let's go through comments from the commissioners, starting with Stan.
I don't have really any comment. I mean, I think they've done as much as they could. It's a small lot, and they've done the best they can to, you know, move it back. And I think, again, like with what Amy says, they'll be better out. They'll be better than it was previously. So I'm okay with it.
All right, thanks. John?
Yeah, I have no comments. I'm all right with this.
Okay, Ernie?
I have no comments. I just want to reinforce the restriction that'll be placed on this lot with respect to fertilizer and herbicides and that sort of any other treatments for the lawn area. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Carolyn. Oh, you're still muted, Carolyn.
Sorry. I agree with Amy. I'd like to see the patio pervious, and I realize that there are all different degrees of pervious surfaces. And so I would like to see this as natural and pervious as possible.
All right, thank you.
That's
And
what I'd
Jim?
like to see.
All right, Jim, you're up.
Yeah, I think there's some good mitigation here. This is apparently a much bigger house than what's currently there, so I think the mitigation is certainly called for. But I don't really have any specific questions or anything, so that's all.
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate, the analysis and the attempt to address my concerns expressed last time. For me, it's a little, it doesn't go quite as far as I hoped it would. It is a large expansion in the 5100, and so I was, hoping to see more what I would view as true mitigation, which is converting lawn to habitat. And as I spoke last time, I really don't view invasive plant removal as mitigation for these types of things. But I appreciate, what was done, the attempts. I appreciate Amy's analysis, and I can see where this is going to go. So I think that this fair accommodation was done to try to meet my concerns. So I do appreciate that. Any comments from members of the audience? Okay, seeing none. Amy, it's appropriate for us to go forward and not wait for the zoning board, correct?
Yeah, there's no need for you to wait for ZBA. You don't for other projects. If for some reason ZBA makes change that alters any footprint, it would back to us either as a change in plan or an amendment, and I would work with them as to which one it would be.
Okay. So we've got the plantings, we've got no chemical applications, and we have a pervious patio. Is that consistent with the plans for the patio? Will that work?
Yes, that'll work. We can make accommodations so that any rainwater that lands on that patio is infiltrated in that area.
Okay. All right. Any last comments from anybody, members of the audience or members of the public? Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 2 Quasin Lane.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I think John won by a hair on that one. All right, seconded by John. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. We'll do a roll call starting with Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you.
Thank you all. Happy holidays, and be careful out there tomorrow about that snow
Yes.
coming.
Yep, same to you.
Happy holidays.
All
Thank
right,
you.
take care.
Bye.
Okay, next we have a request for amended order of conditions for the Witchmere Beach Club, 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2 site modifications. And if we have a representative here, you can go ahead with a summary, please.
Sure, this is Dave McNevich from Coastal Engineering Company.
I believe also on the line would be Mike Charlotte and Bill Gantert from Witchmere, Tom Mulcahy from Hawk Design, and Marion Rose from Andrew Singer's office may be on, but I'm not sure of that. This is the plan, and we did highlight the areas of the plan revision. There were 2 areas that were revised. Over in sort of the northwest area of the project, there was a natural lawn area that an infant pool is being proposed in that area, previously approved. And then over on the east side, this fence along the existing brick driveway was existing. Just a service alley was created by proposing a second fence on inboard of that. That will also be natural lawn area. And so those are the 2 changes. I know there maybe was some question about the coverages. There's a coverage table down in the bottom right-hand corner of the plan that shows what the project was when we started pre-existing, what was approved in February of this year, what was changed in August of this year, and now what's proposed. And as you can see, the site coverage now being proposed is significantly less than what was existing and what was less than what had been approved in February 2020. So there is less site coverage, impervious coverage than what exists prior to the project. In terms of any landscaping questions you may have, I would defer to Tom Mulcahy for that.
All right, thank you. I guess, why don't we go ahead with the landscape and plan description? Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, there we go.
Tom, are you able to share your screen?
Can't hear
we're
you,
not-
Tom.
Not hearing you, Tom.
I'm gonna make you a presenter, or I can share my screen as well.
Yeah, still not coming through.
So oh, there you go. I can, for the time being, I'll bring up the landscape plan on my screen, Tom, and hopefully you can figure out the audio issue.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. can you share can you bring the plan up on your screen, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is there's a several from Hawk. So which is, what sheet do you want?
It's the site planting plan that would have the plant schedule on it.
Yep, I'm just trying to find, there's a whole bunch here. I'm wondering if you had a number like L1 or something like that that I can find real quick.
I believe it's L4.
Okay, thank you. Let's shoot for that. Oh, I think I got it. Planting enlargement plan, is that good?
Well, yeah, it's just that the site planting plan is the one that has the schedule.
Okay, hold on one second.
If you need to refer to the schedule.
Yep. I'm getting there. I'm just checking L3-2, L4. Okay. Zoom out to make it visible. Hold on one second.
Oh, that's the grading plan. It might be, I believe it got switched to L2 for this submission.
Yep,
Oh.
I'll find it. Don't you worry. There we go.
There it is.
Just let me know if you want me to zoom into the plant schedule or what part of the plan you want me to zoom into.
Yeah, so I believe there were some comments referring to the plant schedule with the from the previous submitted plan. There was an increase in the non-natives versus the natives.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just some obvious plan revisions that happened here with everything that Dave McNivish just relayed on the revising of the plan. So I could see how some of the quantities might have gotten increased by that, and I'd be happy to work with you to get them back to where we previously had them, as opposed, for the natives and non-natives.
Okay. Brad, do you want me to make comments on the project, or do you have anything
Yes,
more you
please.
need?
Yep, nope, I think we're all set. Yeah, please, Amy.
Okay, so David, I apologize. In flipping through all the plans, I missed that the ever important piece of the calculations. I'm just gonna scroll back to that page here, since it's on my screen. So it is helpful to know what's, originally there versus what we approved a few times versus what you're asking for now. I guess one of my questions is, and I probably should have asked this a couple meetings ago, but I'm going to ask it now. What exactly is encompassed when you say amenities coverage? I mean, you have building coverage. When you say amenities coverage, what's exactly included there and what's not?
That would be all of the hardscape and the pools, other than the buildings themselves.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I just figured I would ask. Now with that, and I don't know why I can't find your site plan.
Landscape plans, Amy, I think.
No, I got your coverage table right here. Okay. So there is less. Even I guess one of my questions is well, you have an overall increase, and I don't know how did you blow up that section of your plan, David?
Zoom window is one of the tools on that I have in displaying my PDF.
Interesting. Anyway, you are, I mean, it is an increase in coverage from what we previously permitted, but still a decrease from what was there initially. So my question to that was, you know, for need for mitigation, but I think you're still underneath your building coverage is staying the same. It's your amenities coverage that's changed slightly since the last approval, and your site coverage is still less. So I would like to work with Tom on ensuring that there's the same quantity of natives that we had approved. And I think, Mr. Chair, that that's something, if it comes down to it, if it comes down to that, I think that's just something Hawk Design and I can work on. I don't think it should hold up a motion on this project. All other conditions would really stay in effect. Just to remind the commission, there's 2 areas where they're allowed to do, this question came up today on site visits. We didn't end up going to the Witchmere, but we were at a different site and this came up, and I said there's still only 2 areas of the artificial synthetic turf, which is towards your wall there that separates the club from the beach. All the rest is this, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the name of the product, the name of the grass.
Microclover.
Well, microclover, but there was like it was a proprietary blend of the name
Player's
of it.
best.
Player's best, yes. For the rest of the site. My other question was about up near the turnaround. You had said it was going to be reinforced essentially, and my question in an email to you, which I sent the response to the commissioners, that's essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, that's pretty much grass pave, where you have,
That's correct.
yeah, a matrix underneath and
And
grass above.
in
Yeah. So I don't, I guess I don't have any other questions. I would recommend the same conditions as before that we previously had, and that this become the new plan of record, and that I work with Hawk Design for a final, unless you want to see it yourselves, I'd be happy to work with Hawk to make sure that the native plants get beefed up a little bit back to where they were. So that's all
Okay.
I got.
All right, sounds good. Let's see how the commissioners feel. Starting with you, Stan.
No comment at this point.
Okay.
I guess I'm just, I think I made the comment last time, how many times we keep getting changes on this one project, and it's very kind of difficult to keep track of it all here.
All right, thanks, Stan. I know how you feel. John?
Yes, well, I too am going to revisit comments that I remember making the last time we had this conversation, even though it's almost long ago enough for me not to be able to recover any of that. But just looking at this plant list, there's a lot of ornamentals in there. And I don't see how you maintain ornamentals without treating them with fertilizer and probably other pesticides of one sort or another. So unless someone comes in there like once a month and inspects and does soil samples, I don't know how we actually confirm that these ornamental roses, for instance, will never get fed, never get treated with fungicides, never get treated with insecticides. And the other thing that jumps out at me here is there's almost 500 privets going in. I remember there were a lot of privets last time. I don't remember the number, but that seems excessive to me. I think you should really make an effort to find some native hedge material to replace the privet with. I would really like to see that. I don't feel particularly comfortable agreeing to this as it's stated. So those are my comments.
Thanks, John. Ernie?
I agree with what John just said. I think he summed it up perfectly. This particular plot, I think, has been just so over improved, for lack of a better word, that I'm don't know what to say at this point on it. Nothing else.
All right, thanks, Ernie. Carolyn?
I'm going to abstain. I'd like to give an opinion, but I guess if I choose to abstain, I really can't.
Okay.
Yeah, Carolyn, if you have a conflict, if you have a conflict of interest, you can't.
No. I have been a member of this club for about 60 years.
Okay.
So that would be a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jim, you're up.
Yeah, I just have a question as to whether or not all the mitigation work was done that was supposed to be done on the beach area. If anybody could answer that.
Dave, can you answer that?
I cannot answer that. I know early last year we did mark out the area that down on the beach that was to remain unraked and untouched and let vegetation come in, but I don't know much more than that.
Perhaps if Bill Ganchert's on the line, he might.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we actually did nothing to the beach this year. We didn't rake it and do a thing to the beach, so it stayed as it was when we started the season. As far as mitigation, we also did the players best on that lawn next to the float dock, which worked out very well. But as far as the beach, we were going to rope off a section to keep us from raking that section, but as it was, we didn't rake it all in there. So it stayed natural.
So I don't have the conditions here in front of me, but I believe the conditions were that for the first year at least, it was to remain natural. So it seems like because of potentially the situation that we're in right now, that it has anyways, but hopefully you and I can work together maybe to rope that off so that, you know, in the future, it's better defined. We can determine if it needs, I think after the first year, so it'll be soon, it'll be determined if some augmentation with native plantings should be done, and winter, we can do that soon if you like, would be good, because beach grass does best. If we have to plant it, we plant it in winter time.
Yeah, this season with these storms, the way the wind was blowing, there was nothing was allowed to grow over there, over by the harbor.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know if we can. I don't know if the grass would survive there. I guess we should probably try it, but yeah, anytime you want to come down, I'm there. We can talk.
If I remember correctly, there was supposed to be beach grass planted, not that close together, but there was a spacing prescribed for that. Could you check on those conditions at some point, Amy? The order of conditions. I believe it was supposed to be planted right off the bat, and partially just to really define the area that was to become, natural dune essentially. But that was a pretty important piece, and that was mitigation for a violation. So, I would certainly want to figure out whether or not that's been resolved before moving ahead with anything else. That's my comment.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I also don't recall the specifications that well, but I thought there was a requirement for planting. It wasn't just a wait and see type of thing. So, yeah, if you could check on that for us, Amy, that might be pretty important.
You're muted, Amy.
Sorry about that. I have background noise going on. So the next time I'm in the office, be it tomorrow or Friday, I will check on that for you. And I will, Bill and Dave and everybody, I know that you should have the order anyways, but I'll just copy you on it. So you have it right in front of you, okay? We can discuss moving forward on that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I am hearing some reservations about the non-native plantings, and so I wonder if we want to see this spelled
If
out.
I may, if I may, Amy, if it's available tomorrow, I can work with you and get these native quantities back to where they need to be in short order.
I will be available. I'm planning on working from home, but clearly I have remote capability, and you do too. So I would be available to chat with you tomorrow on that, or in the near future.
Okay.
So I think normally I would want to see that document before we rule on this. I'm just aware how everyone's schedule is tight and difficult now, and we're facing a busy meeting next time. So I just wonder if I could ask Amy, how's your feeling on this? It does seem like there's an awful lot of non-natives, in an area we'd like to see more natives. Is this something that you can make some progress on, or should we continue this and see some documentation?
I'm hearing some other, reservations from the commission as well. So, it is up to you how you want to act on this. But if you want to, it's a couple weeks. Yes, we have a busy agenda next time, but one more probably isn't going to hurt things. If you would feel more comfortable with me checking on and getting the mitigation for the tiki hut, checking on that or moving things in the right direction with the property manager, and then working with Tom here on the planting plan. If you feel more comfortable that way and then seeing the results, then I think you should request that they continue until January 6th.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
If it makes you feel better, and that is completely fine with me. Hopefully
Yeah,
it's okay
no,
for the applicant.
Right. The two issues I think are both very important, and so I think that's my preference. Is that okay with the applicant to go to the next meeting or the meeting after?
We would be going to January 5th. Is that what I just heard?
5th or, 21st?
Sorry, it's January 6th or the 20th. Let me just hold on. Let me check that real quick. January 6th or the 20th. We've already gotten multiple filings for both, so I think this would be, if Tom and Bill are around, we can have, probably my schedule would allow for me to work with you both in time for the 6th.
Yep, not a problem with me, Amy.
No problem.
Okay. Well, then I move we continue the requested amended order of conditions for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2 until January 5th, 2021.
That would be the 6th.
Oh, okay, January 6th, 2021. Have a second, please?
I'll second that, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. We'll do a roll call. All those in favor say aye. I'm starting with Stan.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Ernie?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Abstain.
Okay, Jim?
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. All right, thank you for the discussion. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Before you
Over.
go,
Hey, see you.
you want to set a time for tomorrow?
What time works for you?
Well, I mean, we want to say, so we both have time to look at things beforehand. You want to say 1 o'clock?
Okay.
You want to give me, well, you could do me a favor, send me an email with your phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks. Okay,
Bye.
next on the agenda, we have orders of conditions. First is for 10 Fiddler's Landing, map 6, parcel A1-10. It was a proposed access stairway to existing walkway. I guess we'll do them one at a time. If you want to give us an update, Amy.
All right, let me just scroll over to the draft here. My personal computer that I'm doing the documents on is a little slower than my work computer. It's probably because it's 12 years old. It's okay, it's still going. It's a Mac. Okay, so this, if you recall, this really was just to remove the last section of walkway over the marsh and replace that with a section of stairs, a seasonal stairs, so that they could have more ease of launching their small watercraft. So my conditions, I do want an on-site pre-construction meeting because they weren't quite sure last time how exactly they were going to do the aluminum stairs or similar metal. So I do want to meet with them on site, even though it's a very small project. Stairs be seasonal, only in the water between May 15th and October 15th. Off-season storage up near the house outside the 50-foot buffer, not stored on any native vegetation, made of aluminum or similar metal, no pressure-treated lumber is allowed, and no machinery on or work done on the salt marsh. Staging for the project shall be in the driveway or lawn area of the house.
I have a question. Through the
Okay.
chair.
Yeah, sure.
On number 2, in the special conditions, the second sentence reads, off-season storage shall be at the up near the house.
Yeah. Don't you understand?
On the up with the up?
Yes, I'll fix that. Thank you. Good catch on that one. You know, I kind of glanced over that when I was just reading it, and I'm like, something's not right there.
Yeah. And my question
I'll fix that.
is, although this is a small project and it is replacing, can we add fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides clause in it?
I thought about that, and because it's I don't know if we've typically done that with dock or walkway projects.
I know.
So, I mean, it had really nothing to do with the project. So that's why I left it out.
Okay.
I'd
I'll leave
also suggest,
them
that
to-
is it too late to do that? We didn't do
We
it during the
didn't.
hearing.
If we didn't talk about it, it would be difficult to uphold that. We didn't
Okay.
talk about it at the hearing.
That's
I
my
mean, I will certainly, I can write a condition in there that we encourage that and why, like a little education on why. But I don't think we didn't talk about it for this one. And it's kind of a separate, not doing anything to the house, you know, so.
All right. Any other comments? Go ahead and Offer them up.
I have no other comments.
I'm good as well. So I would say whenever Stan and Ernie are ready, you can make a motion.
I'll move we approve the order of conditions for 10 Fiddler's Landing.
I'll second.
Seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye through roll call, starting with Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, next we have an order of condition for 1 Wawa Tacey Road, map 6, parcel F2-1, proposed rock revetment, reconstruction, and sand access ramp.
So this was the second application for a rebuild. Sorry, I'm trying to get over to where I need to be.
Yeah.
So this is, all activities really to take place on this property. I incorporated a lot of the same conditions that we had on it last time. Definitely, that they have to, the start work meeting should also be with a representative of the Windermere Beach Association. They wanted to be part of it. So I put that in there. It's really up to them. But access is going to be down a sand ramp that they're going to create on the property. One of the key things last time is the knitting of the two revetments is actually going to occur 10 feet onto the subject property and not right at the property line. As far as monitoring, transects to be done prior to construction to establish existing beach elevation. After construction, benchmarks shall be installed into the wall to monitor the height of the beach. Each year by March 1st, I put, because that's really, we could do a little later, but it's getting into if they have to do nourishment, it's getting later into the season. So I put each year by March 1st, an inspection shall be completed if nourishment is needed. And if needed, nourishment shall be completed before May 1st. This is not piping plover habitat, so we don't have to really worry about nourishing during their season. But, and it would be, if needed, it would be needed to reestablish the post-construction elevation of the beach. I don't know if that should say pre-construction elevation of the beach. And again, that nourishment would be placed on the face of the rock wall so that over the year, the sand would migrate down. Other conditions about plantings, of course. If you need me to go into anything, any more depth, let me know.
Yeah,
Any comments on this one?
I have one question. As part of the discussion on the sand nourishment, we were talking about a requirement, during the discussion about nourishing a certain level to keep the base covered, and then it turned out to be we only did it over a 3-year period that it was required at the end. I don't see that being mentioned in here. Because as we were talking about the revetment, one of my questions became, if you didn't nourish the revetment, it could deteriorate anyway. So they were part of the discussion was nourishing it every year. And then the question came up, well, based on, you shouldn't have to do it every year, whether you need it or not. And then it was going to get limited to just the 3 years, I thought. And then beyond that, it was kind of out of our purview at that point.
My understanding with that was we were talking about 3 years if they were to do it annually and then see if, but then what I would recommend is to have ongoing conditions after they receive a certificate of compliance for this, ongoing conditions of monitoring that beach level and nourishing when appropriate. So I would recommend that those conditions, just like we have ongoing conditions about no fertilizers, ongoing condition number whatever to monitor the level of the beach and nourish as needed.
But is that part of this? And if so, it's not in.
You don't have to worry about that now ongoing. That would be
Okay.
at the time of the certificate of compliance to put the ongoing condition on.
How will we remember to do that at that point?
So let me add those words. Let me add those words to special condition number 6.
Okay, just more for, because whether, who knows, I mean, whether this board can change, you know, or members could change, or who would, you know, how to remember to do that.
No, I'll put the language that that's a good catch. I'll put the language that we typically have about this condition is to not be released by, is to be ongoing, not to be released by a certificate of compliance.
Mm-hmm. Amy, I have a question too on that. I think I'd like them to report to you when they feel they need nourishment, so that you know how it's going.
So I can add each year by March, or I can add that we can do a quick annual report. I don't think that's out of the scope of what we kind of discussed. They're going to do an annual, they're going to do an annual inspection anyways, but they should report.
They should report back, I think.
Yeah, no, it'd be good to have a record of when, I mean, I'm supposed to inspect the sand anyways, but actually that doesn't say that in either in there. It just says, so number 7, I shouldn't look at the sand. The only reason, I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but when I was out, you know, in Eastham doing a lot more sand nourishment, I mean, the quality, they all say it's clean bank sand, but their people's interpretation of what that is different. I've seen a lot of construction debris in sand samples, so I like to look at it. Okay, I agree with you, Carolyn. I will add some reporting language in there.
And then I have a question on 13. And my screen, here we go. Photos of the site shall be taken before and after the project is finished. These photos must be submitted to the Conservation Administration. And it doesn't matter whether they send it electronically or in kind, or do you want it absolutely electronically, only electronically?
It doesn't really matter to me.
So then I would just say must be submitted to the Conservation Commission.
And that's actually where I'm gonna put in the monitoring reports language too.
Okay.
That's where it applies there. They usually prefer to do it electronically, so.
Yeah, makes it easier.
Yeah. That's, I think, why I put it there, because if I can make it easier for them, they're more likely to comply with it.
Yes. I also had a question about whether it's in our purview to put in that the representative of the Windermere Beach Association would like to be present. We don't generally tell any of these applicants that they have to talk to their neighbors, other than we don't tell them they have to get along with their neighbors. We just tell them they have to notify their neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we can't tell them they have to. I just put the language in there to kind of would like to be part of the meeting. That's not really up to us, but at least it's a note in there saying we tried to remind them. And from all, I think that, and what I'll do, honestly, if they don't, when I get the start work meeting, when I hear about it and they schedule it with me, I'll just send a quick email to Ed Doherty about it.
That's good.
As well. We can't hold them to that, but it was just there as a reminder.
Okay.
Any further comments? Well, if there's none, I think somebody could make a motion, please.
I'll move to approve the order of conditions for 1 Wawa Tacey with the modifications discussed here.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye, starting with the roll call with Stan.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Ernie?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So that cert passes. And next we have on the agenda a request for certificate of, oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry. That was an order of conditions. Had a little crisis at home I had to attend to, sorry. Next we have a request for certificate of compliance for 18 Strainway, map 1, parcels J1-5A and J1-90, new dwelling. Do you have a summary for us, Amy?
Yep. So this was, as you may recall, 18 Strandway, the Turner property, had 2 orders of conditions. They had this one, which was for the land side of things, and then they had the dock permit, which we'll talk shortly about under discussion as they have submitted their annual, their first annual shellfish report. So getting back to this, I was very pleasantly surprised because it doesn't, believe it or not, it doesn't always happen this way. I found that all the hardscape, decks, patios, porches, house corners, fences, all matched the site plan that we approved. Usually there's a little corner here, a little corner there that's slightly different, and it's usually not an issue. But this was, from what I saw, all done to plan. The landscaping plan is moving along well. The plants are in and doing well. I do recommend that if you issue the cert tonight, that we have ongoing conditions to keep maintaining the plants, replanting them if they die, maintaining the invasive, removing the invasive species as anything pops up. Also that you condition for ongoing that no chemical application or fertilizers occur. It does look a little green out there. We did allow permanent irrigation outside the 50-foot buffer. I put the order in there. I did not get the specs on the lawn grass that I was supposed to, because it was supposed to be a native grass. I don't see it. I can check again. I did double check. But if not, I do want to reach out to the Turners and see if they can provide that. And again, it does look a little, the grass didn't look like a mix. It looked primarily one type of grass when I looked at it. And that leads me to believe potentially, when you only have a monoculture of things, 1, it may not be a native grass, and 2, are they using chemicals to keep out weeds and things like that. So I want to have that conversation with the Turners. They would be subject to enforcement if it is found that that they are using chemicals or fertilizers on the site. But other than, I don't really know how, I mean, we can prove it. Ernie mentioned something on site today, and Ernie can bring that up if he chooses to, but, I mean, I would recommend the cert with ongoing conditions prohibiting that.
Do you want to wait till you have that conversation, or would you recommend that we move tonight?
It doesn't matter to me,
Mm-hmm.
because regardless, it's gonna be an ongoing condition anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you want to vote on it tonight, or you want to hear from the Turners, that's fine.
Okay. All right, well, let's hear what the commissioners say, especially those who got out there today to look at the site.
We actually didn't go, we didn't actually go visit the site, but some of the commissioners may have on their own.
Yeah, I've looked at the dock a couple times, but not, the lawn area. Any comments from the commissioners on this?
Well, Stan, we didn't go today, but we've been there a couple of times recently when we were looking at some other properties. We went right by it. So, I mean, I've seen the lawn within the last few weeks. And I agree, it looks very green. And I guess without getting an answer on that, I don't know if we should be issuing a certificate of compliance if they're not complying with the conditions.
Yeah. All right, let's go through comments for everybody, I guess. John, how do you feel?
So I'm just looking at the order of conditions, and one thing that is required is a Cape Cod seed mix. And I believe the order of conditions also explicitly forbid, well, turf grass or what do you call it? What's that?
Sod.
Sod, thank you. So it should be actually, and I do remember looking at it, as Stan says, when we were over in the neighborhood, but I didn't note specifically what plants are there, and I don't know whether a Cape Cod seed mix actually includes clover, because if we're explicitly requiring a seed mix that includes clover, it's pretty easy to just look at the lawn. If not, maybe it's not quite so easy to look at even the seed mix, which is different from whether it's been treated, but that's just another level of whether that part is in compliance. So aside from that, I just have questions about stuff that's in the order of conditions. Toward the end, number 18 talks about the installation of new marsh grass plantings. Have you verified that that has happened, Amy?
I apologize, I have not. I looked over that, and I did Blue Flax mention it in their letter? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But
let me check.
Okay, so number 19 is a monthly report on status of construction shall be submitted on the first of the month for the month's prior work. Has that been done?
That was not done.
So number 20 is a twice annual monitoring report on status of the land management plan / marsh replanting shall be submitted after the plan has been started. After that, it may be submitted once a year. The report shall include photos and may be submitted electronically. Has that been done?
I believe so. Let me check.
And then there's, well, the other conditions probably aren't relevant, except I do take it that Blue Flax Design is still running the land management plan.
I have not heard any different.
And
we
the
do have
report you have is from them, right?
Yeah, the letter that we have dated December 1st is from them.
Okay, so that's probably the case. All right. Well, those are just, I don't know what we do if they haven't, complied with the reporting requirements, but it's something to be noted. I'm not sure.
I think maybe it does warrant, we can see what everyone else thinks, but I would say it does maybe warrant looking further into and not voting on this tonight.
Okay, Ernie, how do you feel?
I'm sort of, I agree with everything John said. The question of what kind of grass they used, I doubt it was what we requested. The fact that they didn't submit the monthly reports, I'm not surprised. The lawn area does extend into the 50-foot buffer zone. And if the Blue Flax was responsible for the land management, then I assume that includes the lawn plantings and any application to the lawn.
I don't believe Blue Flax was in charge of the lawn.
Why wouldn't they be?
I think I will double check, but I was under the impression that the construction contractor was doing the lawn.
And the contractor is Turner.
Don't quote me on it. I will double check it, but I don't believe Blue Flax did the lawn. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. So there's no way that I would approve of a certificate of compliance for this lot, given what we see today out there. Now, I think the question we have to ask is, what do we do about it? Because I am not confident that the Turners will willingly give up a lawn that looks like every other lawn on Strainway, unfortunately. But yet those are the requirements we put in place when we approved the order of conditions anyhow. So the fact that they haven't complied with them, I think, is something we need to deal with. The question is, how do we do that? I would suggest if Blue Flax Design was in charge of land management, that we go to them and ask them what kind of lawn was put in. They should be able to determine that, Amy, right?
Yes, I mean, to John's question, to kind of marry the two, a native grass seed on Cape Cod is primarily rising fescues. I didn't closely look with a microscope, but I didn't see much variety there.
No.
I saw monoculture when I did look. Definitely no clover, and not all Cape Cod mixes include clover. But this did, I'll go and look closer, but I can ask Blue Flax. It did appear to have been put down as turf potentially. So
Yeah.
it was grown way too close together. It was a little too perfect.
Just as an aside, I think we have that same problem on Shore Road that we need to address at some point too. But putting that aside, what I would suggest is that we ask the Blue Flax to submit a report on the lawn, the type of grass that was used, whether or not it's been fertilized, and also soil samples showing the condition of the soil right now. And then if we determine, or if they determine that there has been fertilizer applied to the lawn, that we require that soil samples be submitted on a 6-month basis for the next 3 years to confirm that they're not applying any sort of fertilizers or pesticides or anything like that.
I like that.
I think 3 years would allow the lawn to establish itself in a natural state. That's the reason I put that time.
Well, I think what you would need to add to that is that you're going to see, if it's not natural, and you're going to see die off, and that any reseeding, emphasis on seeding, has to be with a native grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could require a reseeding, I believe, if that proves to be necessary.
No, absolutely, we could. Have them tear up the whole lawn and redo it.
Good points, Ernie. Carolyn?
I would hesitate. I was out at, well, we were out looking at the house across the street just a couple weeks ago. We were looking at the grass quite carefully and commenting on how green and even it did look. I like the idea of requesting all this information. I'm not sure it's our place to go to Blue Flax ourselves, or do we ask the Turners to go to Blue Flax and give us the information? I think.
Yeah, we can't stipulate, we have to go to the owner because he's the one obviously paying. We would tell the owner and suggest that they might use Blue Flax since Blue Flax, but go to the owner saying that we need a soil sample, you know, talk about whether fertilizers were used, what is the grass type that is out there, soil samples monthly, things like that. So we really can't tell them they have to use Blue Flax. We can just tell them what needs to be done.
Well, if I may comment, we did require that if they changed land management people, they needed to come to us first. So I don't know if you include testing the soil and giving a report as land management. I would, in which case they have to go to Blue Flax or talk to us about it.
Exactly. I mean, if they were to change, they'd have to get it approved. I agree.
Well, those are my thoughts. I would hesitate to rip up the lawn, even though it's tempting. If in fact it is a what did you call it? A
Monoculture.
Monoculture. And it is not fertilized, then it will die off, and we're back to the original order of condition to, you know, with a native seed. So I definitely am not comfortable approving the the certificate of compliance right now.
All right, thanks, Carolyn. Jim?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the comments already. I mean, it seems like we just need to take a hard look at every part of the landscaping plan, from the water all the way up the lawn, all the plantings. It doesn't seem like the plantings have been in for 2 years yet either. That was the first thought I had, was that we should maybe wait until to make sure everything's established. But the issues with the lawn are concerning, and seems like maybe a site visit would be in order for us as well. So those are my comments.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Jim. And I also agree with the comments previously stated. I'm concerned about compliance with our no chemical application, order. There's several places I've seen in town where I think that there's been no compliance at all. So I think it's something we need to work on, and for this particular, cert, but also town-wide. So I'd advocate having a time we can get out there together. So I don't think we need any motion here, Amy. It just, we're not approving it tonight, correctly? Is that correct?
You're muted.
Right, correct. I know.
Yep.
I have a prancing dog. I'm trying to mute my noise and the background noise here. Yeah, I'll put it on the next agenda with hope that I'll have at least more answers. We can at least talk about it. Okay?
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. That was a good discussion. So next we have a request for certificate of compliance for 1 Belmont Road, map 1, parcel C1-1. This was for tree removal and beach nourishment. It's actually 2. Tree removal is SE 32-2151, and the beach cleaning and nourishment is SE 32-2170. Do you have a recommendation here, Amy?
Well, both of them are expired, and they have a new beach cleaning permit that was recently extended. So it makes the first one obsolete. I think they're just trying to clean things up. And then the tree removal, most of you, I was here, Brad was here. I don't think anybody else was here at the time. They have a kind of a drainage area where some of their site runoff goes into, and it's actually kind of dune-like, but it was seeing a grove of pitch pines grow up in the middle of it, and they were allowed to do some removal in there. It was also the roots were causing an issue with the drainage system. Many of the trees are resprouting, so clearly the roots didn't die. Might be asking to remove them again at some point in the future, but again, it's expired. They can't do any work under it. So one of them is obsolete because there's a new permit, and one of them is obsolete because it's expired. So I would recommend, just for housekeeping purposes, that you grant them certs of compliance.
Okay. All right, thanks. Any comments? Anybody on this? Sounds pretty straightforward. All right. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve the certificates of compliance for 1 Belmont Road, map 1, parcel C1-1, both SC 32-2151 and SC 32-2170.
I'll
Second,
second.
please. Seconded by Carolyn. Thank you. All those in favor say aye, starting with Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase. Aye. Okay. This takes us to discussion. And we've got 2 items. And the first is to review the shellfish survey in compliance with shellfish mitigation for 18 Strainway. And so
I
know
can
we have Mark.
introduce it if you want, but Mark's also on the line.
Yeah, if you want to summarize, there's a fair amount of moving parts here. I mean, if you want to summarize, then we'll ask Mark to make a presentation. How's that?
Yeah, that's fine. So part of one of the conditions for the approval of the dock at 18 Strainway was the annual report, the first year after dock installation. I want to apologize. This report came to me a couple months ago and kind of fell off the table a little bit. So we're just discussing it right now. I mean, the commission, the main goal of the surveys, this one and the ones that are going to follow, are to see if, and it's hard to tell exactly because there's so many variables with shellfish productivity, but to see if there was an impact that the stock might have to shellfish habitat. Understanding there are things such as, people harvesting shellfish and other things that could impact what you find on the day of a survey. So what they found essentially, and it was John Lowell who did it, who was one of the original people who did the shellfish survey here. They found, I would say, a fair number of shellfish and a mixed class, meaning different ages of shellfish, which is encouraging to see. I took Mark's spreadsheet, or maybe it was John Lowell's spreadsheet. Somebody put it together. It must have been Mark because he did AECom too. And I made my own little table on that, if you will, doing the totals. And one thing that John pointed out to me in an email was, well, obviously AECom's numbers were lower because John Lowell sampled 10 times the area. And actually, if you look at it, the results show that Pam's survey wasn't necessarily incorrect by having fewer. It's just John did that many more sampling plots, so it's a magnitude of 10, so it actually corresponds fairly well. I think this is encouraging, and I'm anxious to see what the next reports show. If I've been out to the dock a few times, and one thing that is starkly different from a lot of other docks on Herring River in particular, over salt marshes, is this is a very high dock. And if you look underneath, granted, it's only been a little over a year, but there's very little salt marsh impact that I can tell at this point. So I'm not saying there's none, and it'll be interesting because it's only been a year. And it'll be interesting to see where things go from here on. But I do think this is an interesting case study. Just so you are aware, Mr. Turner has paid for 3 years of shellfish mitigation to the town, for the town to do it. I've put it in the account. I let Heinz know that that funding has to go to shellfish mitigation in the Herring River. And with that, I will be quiet and let Mark talk if that's what you like, Brad.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so there's a lot of data here, and moving forward, when we finally actually put a dock in the same area that we did the shellfish surveys, this kind of data will be a lot easier to reduce. It was very difficult to try to compare essentially apples to apples, except on who did surveys where the dock actually wound up being, because you know, AECOM started out in the middle of the lot, which is where we were going to put it, and the conditions are different there. But having said that, if the proportions work out, then I mean, we know there's shellfish there and all of that. So the idea, the attempt here is to try to get an idea if it changes. So I looked at all the data, and I think if I wanted to be real simple, I would just say that for me, I didn't see any degradation or any dips in the shellfish quantities, population, species, etc. What I did notice was a higher volume of seed. And I'm hoping that next year that we'll get a higher volume of shellfish because that seed was able to stay there and be happy and grow. But we won't know that till next year. So yeah, this is the first attempt. So admittedly, the data is confusing because there's a lot of it. But when we move upriver to do it, you know, all that data is going to be in the same grid overlaid. So you'll have much more direct comparisons. So with that, my conclusion is basically that everything's cool. I didn't see any degradation, but I did see more seed, which I thought was very encouraging. And I'm looking forward to see what next year does with this.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Sure.
All right, let's see. We have comments from the commissioners. We'll start with Stan.
Yeah, two things. One is in terms of the surveys, I don't know what all, you know, we've talked about this before, Mark. I don't know what all the variables should be or are, but maybe if we, is one of the things we should do at a minimum, take it the same, right around the same date of the year, and that should maybe, you know, what any differences or variables with shellfishing or you know, seasonality or any of those things. So that would be my suggestion. And the other comment, and I've made this, I think I've said this to you before at one of the meetings. Yeah, from not as an expert, but from what I've seen, I've been very pleased with that dock and the grass around it. You know, I've been around that dock, on the water, under it, low tide, high tide, and I've been very pleased with what I see around that dock compared to a lot of the old style docks that are out there on the river.
We aim to please.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, thanks for that. The last, let's see, John Lowell did surveys here in May of 18. AECom did one in September of 18, and we're in August.
Yeah, my
So,
recommendation is that you stay consistent, like you did the survey 1 year out in August.
Yep.
So do next year's in August.
I will
I know
set,
that we did surveys like all over the place when we first started this, but if we can stay consistent with the follow-up surveys would be good.
right. Yep, so our goal is to have it done in August next year, and I'll try to set my calendar for that. Sure.
All right, John, any comments?
Yeah, I just looking at the data that's there from the 3 shellfish surveys, I agree that it doesn't look like things have changed. I don't think you can look at that data and conclude that there's any significant change one way or another, which is a good thing. A couple of other things. One is, I think before next August, we have to talk about the detailed parameters of what the survey is going to be, because clearly between Pam Newbert and John, I forget what his last name is, the other guy, John Lowell, they have very different methods. So, you know, getting raw numbers out of 2 very different survey techniques, I think is problematic. And we have to make sure that whatever happens next August is consistent as possible with previous attempts, not just the time of year, it's how you get the numbers. And I think we're going to be talking about that anyway, generally. Oh, and one other question. You said there was a lot of seed this time around. Where'd the seed come from? Has that area been seeded?
I asked Heinz that question, and his answer is that he does not specifically broadcast the seed on the beach. He broadcasts the seed in the river and lets the current take it wherever it goes. So perhaps because that's a bend in the river and somewhat of an eddy, perhaps, that maybe it found its way there. But he did not directly walk on the beach and cast the seed out like he does in other areas.
So this is clearly introduced seed. It is not any naturally occurring thing.
It could be natural. We do have shellfish, I would say we can't
Right.
say exactly where it's coming from. We do seed there, but there are naturally shellfish of adult size that are of reproductive state that are in the river. So there's no saying that some of the seed didn't come from them. Or the potential is ARC has their facility just on the other side of the river, and sometimes some of the seed does get washed. I mean, normally they capture it all, but it could get washed out in the outflow. But we do have, whether or not the viable adult shellfish in the river are the result of our town seeding, or if they're just, I think there's some natural set still in there, especially of quahogs. So I think it's a combination, John, of seeding efforts and natural set. My own personal opinion.
The real key will be what happens next year. And John Lowe will be doing these unless he decides to retire. He's much more available, and so he'll be using the same methods each time. And even if you guys change your regulations, he should stick with the methods that he's been using to keep it consistent. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Ernie.
Yeah, and I'd also suggest that as we go forward with this, I noticed that the map that's included here showing the grid layout for ACOM versus what John did, ACOM was about half the size, so I'm not surprised the results were significantly less as well. So I would strongly suggest that we mirrored, John's transects that he's already mapped out here and use those going forward on every one of the surveys that we do. How long is this going to take place in this particular locale?
2 more years.
2 more years. All right. That's great. I think this what we're getting out of this is very valuable from my perspective. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Carolyn.
I was encouraged by the surveys, and I was encouraged that there was very little damage to the salt marsh with a high dock, and that particular dock, I believe, has almost the perfect east-west orientation, and I think that makes it easier for the sunlight to get underneath the docks. So I think keeping in mind the orientation of a dock is also important. I was a little disgusted that that black mayonnaise was so close to shore.
Well, yeah.
That did discourage me, but that's well part of the shellfish lack of habitat, or or just health of the river. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, the black mayo is probably also because there's an eddy system there, and where we were initially siting the dock more toward the middle, it's really bad. I mean, I went out there and Jane actually came out of her house, not yelling and screaming, but she came out of her house and said, "You be careful." And I said, "Well, just watch me. If I need help, I'll let you know." But yeah, you sink fast. And there's 3 feet poop there.
And Jane Sugden would come out and personally rescue you.
Yes, she would.
She's feisty.
Anybody know how she's doing? I haven't heard lately.
No.
Anyway.
For anybody who doesn't know, she lives in the Windmill House, pretty much kind of diagonal from this, and it's been there for a very long time.
Well, she was T-boned by a car.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh, like a year ago. She can't move her neck. They had to pull her out. She was driving her van, and somebody broadsided her and stuffed her right under the glove box. And they had to cut the car to get her out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So her neck, I guess she broke some vertebrae in her neck, and now she can't really move her neck. Yeah. But as feisty as ever, pal, I'll tell you what.
She can overcome anything. I think she's gonna live longer than me. So.
All right, Jim, you're up.
Sorry.
I don't have any comments on it.
All right, thanks. And yeah, I don't have a lot of comments either. I think at the end of the period is when it'll be time to look at the data and try to think about what it might suggest. It is tough. I work with population assessments for marine fish, and there's 2 particular assessments that I work on for short-lived species, and the assessment will not accept the data series until it's 10 years old, because you really have to get multiple generations of recruitment until you can get a sense of what a population is doing. So this is a start. So cohogs, they might be mature in 2 years, so maybe 10 years is not necessary. They'll start spawning, probably in a couple of years. So either way, we'll see how it looks. Now, I think I heard Mark say 4 surveys. I thought the order of condition called for 3 post-construction surveys. 3 years, 3 annual surveys.
Correct. I'm saying there were 3 surveys done already. This is the 4th one.
Okay. So yeah. All right. So I'm still 3 post-construction surveys, and okay. And the language is if there's degradation to habitat, then additional mitigation shall be required. So it's a little bit tricky the way the language came out, because it's really talking about degradation to a habitat, whereas we're really monitoring shellfish densities. So I think this is a good start. I think it's good to get the data and good to talk about it, but I don't have too much to offer right now.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. even if the population, if the shellfish population was degraded, or if it excels, it's hard to pin it on why, because we're only doing this in one set, one kind of data.
Right.
When I really, we got to start somewhere. This was a start that we're all in this to do together, and we'll see where it goes.
Yep. It helps us think about survey design. We're talking about that, and so this helps us, think about what is optimal, and we can go from there. And who knows, maybe down the road, some student or intern might take the data and make something out of it. It's what we do with fish is we model environmental covariates that might tell us what produces a good year class, what produces large numbers of new recruits. And you could possibly take this data and do, so it'd be pretty crude with just 3 years, but you could start to do that type of analysis, which is interesting. So who knows, maybe there's a future biologist in town who might want to tackle that. So,
Well, you know that I was an observer for 3 years, right?
I know that, yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, it was just a little while ago, right?
2010 to 11 to 12, something like that. But 3 years, I went anywhere from here to in Chatham to 200 miles offshore, up to 2 weeks at a time. But at any rate, the data gathering is interesting, and nowhere keeps going in the same place, so they don't change that variable. But if the fish move, it makes it look like the fish aren't there anymore, or that the fish are declining, when in fact they might have just gone somewhere else. And there's a whole movie about that, about the lobster population. I forget the name of it. It's not Lobster Wars, but the lobster population has been going north because of to get to colder water. And now they've really congregated around this island that Canada and the US are fighting over. And it wasn't a big deal until billions of lobsters arrived, and now it's a big deal. Very interesting. So I digress.
Yeah, it is, and you need to look at your environmental data. It's very important. And yes, I was an observer for 3 years too, a long time before that, in the mid '80s. All foreign ships back then, all going offshore, long-term trips with foreign ships. But interesting experience. All right, I guess we can. Sorry, go ahead.
No, very much so. I enjoyed it. It's a part of my life I wanted to do. It was pretty cool. It wasn't deadly as catch, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the next section of the discussion, which is quite related on dock and pier regulation changes. And I guess I'll start off with some context, because it's something I've been working on closely and trying to put together thoughts on what might be good to do in terms of regulation changes. And so we had a public hearing on this, a joint hearing with Waterways. I believe it was January 2011. And I don't think we had a discussion in October, I believe, a brief one. And so I'm hoping what we can do is get back to the point where we're going to submit some changes that can be reviewed by the commission and voted on for moving forward. And
you mean 2019, right, Brad?
I think it was January 2019, yes.
Okay, I was like, not 2011. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was, it was a little
Yeah,
while
you're
ago.
right. We did.
That's what my records show. And
Yeah.
so I prepared some kind of summary recommendations at the time. And what I'm doing right now is I'm preparing a PowerPoint presentation. It's going to have pictures, and it's going to have a range of options to consider. I thought it might be useful for any public interaction too to have that. So I would like to, provide that. And I think I'll have it ready for the next hearing, though we probably won't have time for it. Is that your expectation, Amy? On that night, we probably won't have time to tack this on.
Probably not. I mean, I can always put it on there, and if we get to it, great. And if we don't, then we don't.
Yep.
We got a lot of houses on vacant lots. We have houses on vacant lots and docks coming in, so.
Yay. Yeah, so it might not happen, but that's okay, because to me it's the kind of concept where it wouldn't be a bad idea to have the commissioners get a hold of this and look at it. And so that's coming up. there won't be a lot of changes from what we discussed before. I'd like to present a range of options to consider that includes, you know, from things like having just a town-wide moratorium to having location moratoriums to having changes to the regulations and then no changes whatsoever, and then just, you know, use the PowerPoint to kind of drive discussion. So I can go over particular points tonight if people want, but I think we're all familiar with, you know, the different items. I mean, really, in terms of regulation changes, we talked about setback changes to adjacent structure, setbacks to property lines. We talked about pier height requirements as well as plank spacing. We've talked about off-season storage, water depth at mean low water, and cumulative impacts. And that, you know, covers a lot of it. And as a basis for my review, I reviewed, I think, 6 or 7 neighboring towns to see what they have. And I used that review to help kind of guide what I think might be possible. So that's what I have. And I guess I'll just go through everybody and see how they feel. And, you know, and if anyone has any questions on what I'm doing, that's fine as well. So, Stan, I'll start with you, and I'll say up front, thank you very much for all your diligence and keeping an eye of off-season storage.
Sure. Yeah, I took my racks off the car this weekend, so I won't be going out kayaking until spring.
Don't blame you.
I think the thing that's come up for me, and I've mentioned it, I think, in some other conversations, is the potential. What you know, as time changes, in particular, in I guess with rivers more than, well, it could happen in ponds too. But based on what I sent in that memo to you, those pictures where there are existing docks and at low tide, I mean, the docks are right on the ground. There's no water underneath them. So I don't know what we can do in terms of going forward in terms of improving that aspect of existing docks.
Yeah, that's a good point. That gets to the, you know, depth at mean low water. And, you know, for recent docks, it could be a compliance issue. But some of these docks have been around a very long time, and there might have been changes in the sediment.
Right. Depth. Right, that's my concern. It's the change of the river, not of the way the dock was installed originally. And I don't know what we can do about that.
I think one of the things is when those docks come in to get rebuilt, well, I can't say how it would affect the depth because it would come into dredging and whatnot. But I mean, at least we could improve the elevation of the dock to have less impacts on salt marsh coming forward. Because when they come in for a rebuild, and they all eventually do, we could at least get them in compliance with that. But I don't have an answer in terms of how do we get them, you know, maybe there's certain docks that are not at the 80-foot requirement. Or maximum, maybe they're shorter and just going, maybe if we let them go out a little farther, understanding that they're somewhat grandfathered.
Right.
Maybe you can allow them to extend farther in the future, but I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
But when you say allowed to extend, that would be at their choice. We wouldn't be able to make them. I mean, assuming all things considered, you know, that they have the additional length and it wouldn't affect.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that. I have to look into that a little bit more because if they come in for a rebuild, then I think you can have them comply to the greatest extent practicable. But I can look into that more.
And like I said, I mentioned rivers, but like I said, I guess it could happen in ponds. I mean, we've looked at some of the things that have happened, water depths on ponds and everything else. So I don't know. But that's my concern, I think, based on what I've been seeing anyway, so.
Yep. Thanks, Stan. And I'll follow up. I did a little bit of looking into Army Corps regulations, and I did find a general condition under the Massachusetts general permit, general condition number 2, that prohibits storage in resource areas and buffer zones. It requires upland storage. So, you know, our concern is shared by other permit authorities. So, again, thanks for your work on that, and I think we'll start to make some progress on that, hopefully. All right, John?
Yeah, hi. Just on that subject, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but I see that in your proposal there, you're proposing changing the required depth from 2.5 to 3 feet. But my other thought about that, and I don't know that that affects whether floats will ever end up sitting on mud at low tide, but low tides aren't always the same, of course, and we're specifying depth at mean low water. I just wonder whether and a while ago I looked at other town regulations, and some towns, like maybe Barnstable, I think were using MLLW, which I think is mean lower low water, mean lowest low water or something. It's a
That's correct.
more and I wonder whether we shouldn't consider that as well, just as another step to try to ensure that at least new docks being installed never end up sitting on hard ground. So that's just one thought. And then on the shellfish business, I have some questions. And one thing I realized today when I was looking at the Strainway shellfish results from AECOM and John Lowell there, is that they're not even describing what they do in a compatible way to make it easy to compare. And I think, Brad, what you were proposing is to have transects with sample plots that were 1 square foot, even though Pam Newbert refers to having 1 cubic foot, which is a different thing, and also raises the question, if we want to attempt to ensure consistency, do we need to, aside from the plot area, be specific about the depth in some way or another? And my other question along those lines, again, this was brought out by the Strainway results, is that John Lowell uses much bigger plots, and that I think has the advantage that you're more likely to find the shellfish that are there, assuming they are there, if you have bigger plots. So should we be requiring larger plots as well, or as you were proposing, smaller 1 square foot plots like the one that Newbert seems to do? So I don't know the answer to those questions, but I'm posing them and suggesting we should think about that and figure out what makes the most sense. Maybe you already have something specific in mind, Brad, or maybe you were just putting those things in there for placeholders. I'm not sure, but those are my questions about all of this.
Yeah, no, really good questions. And again, thank you for your analysis earlier, which I think is going to fuel this as well. But no, that was prepared, for the joint meeting, and it really relied, I think, on AECOM sampling, which I thought was probably a better approach in terms of coverage. And I was using cubic foot, not square foot. And so we can certainly revisit that. I'm really interested in getting to the questions of the best sampling design as well as the best way to set up thresholds as to what's significant and what isn't. So that's something I hope can come out of this. But,
So can I just ask, Brad,
sure.
what is the reason for preferring a volume measurement? In some way, I mean, you know, you could dig a very deep hole that's only, you know, a tenth of a square foot, but really deep, or dig a hole that's a full square foot in area and only a foot deep. And is it intentional that you allow some latitude to the person who's doing the survey so that they can assess what the conditions are on the ground, or what? I don't get that. I don't understand the process.
It's a good point. We've never had specs in the town of Harwich on how to do a survey. So, I mean, there's been some rough, you know, general information, but, you know, the way they dig, you know, I think with AECOM, their sampling rake is a foot wide. And so that's where you get, you know, the length by width. And then they go down a foot, I think, to try to capture where those shellfish might be. And if it's in the summertime, quahogs are not that deep. And the same goes for soft shell clams. So it may be that you don't have to go that deep, but I think, you know, John, he's always done the wider plot, and he must have a good reason for that. But, you know, I think going forward, hopefully we do some reg changes, and hopefully we'll have more specifications on how the sampling should occur so we get consistency. And so you can see the 10 by 10 quadrat thing I have written down really comes from AECOM. And so, you know, I did speak to one fellow that works in Barnstable, and he randomizes. And so, you know, as a scientist, that's something I'm interested in. I wonder if we should be calling for randomized samples across the transect. And so, you know, I consulted with him, and I think we should just continue to try to figure out the best way to have a survey. So there's almost two issues here. One is what we would like for reg changes to reduce impacts or avoid impacts, and then how we want to require surveys, and then how we want to set up, you know, interpretation so that we're not always asking whether, you know, it's significant or not. So those are things that I want to try to flesh out. So
maybe we can ask, I mean, they all have a method to their madness. They all do things in a way because of certain reasons. I have no problem reaching out to John and Pam, and BSC has done a survey or two for us, and just kind of asking them, well, okay, well, what do you do? What's your formula? What do you do? And why do you do it this way? Is it, that may or may not help us.
I think that's a good idea, Amy. And I think, you know, one thing that's troubled me is the omission of soft shell clams. It's happened several times, really significant omissions. And so that learning more about their methods might help with that. So I went down to 10 Harbor Way this past week during the really low tides, and that's a site where we actually denied up here. And there's been a newer set of soft shell clams, and it's just, you know, there could never be a questionable omissions because they're all over the place. And, you know, so it is something that's important. It's a species that I think is very important that we should be avoiding impacts on, yet they don't often come up in the surveys. So, all right, thanks, John. Carolyn, any comments?
I was just wondering what other towns are doing for these questions. I mean, if I were living in Yarmouth and I wanted to put in a dock, what would they ask me to do?
Yep. I'm looking up right now to see which towns I reviewed. So Dennis, Yarmouth, Barnstable, Brewster, Chatham, and Orleans. So I can summarize those notes and make those available. It was interesting. There's quite a range. You know, Chatham has a moratorium, and Barnstable has got some location by location requirements. but no one's really nailed down that question of what is significant habitat, what does it mean?
Or how they want the survey done?
There is some cases a little more direction, so I think I can pull that together, and it'll be helpful. I think it'll give you guys an idea. You know, for example, Yarmouth and Dennis have already gone to 3 feet mean low water, and so they're already there. That's one, to me, I think it just should be done. So I can pull that together, and I hope to go further west and look into Falmouth and Mashpee, and I haven't done that yet. But I think I'll pull together that summary and the PowerPoint, and I think it will be useful to look at that.
Yeah, and now my other question was where Chatham has declared a moratorium, and which towns did you say has a specific area moratoriums?
Well, Barnstable doesn't have an area moratorium, but they've gone and classified their areas, location by location, and said, okay, here's what we have for habitat. And that took a tremendous amount of basically local knowledge. And I talked to one of the guys that was involved with the process, and they kind of just went out and said, what do you think about this spot? So they didn't ban, you know, but they identified what was really good habitat. And so I think it kind of gave them, you know, some upfront information on location by location. And, you know, I don't know if we could do that approach. Maybe we probably have less area than they do, but yeah, that's. But I also find that their approach a little confusing. It's still, you know, I wish they took it a little bit further and said, okay, here's what you can do. They also have pretty good language on cumulative impacts, which some towns don't, are kind of silent on that. I found language with the Army Corps permit on cumulative impacts. They absolutely can consider it. And I think we can too. So I would like to enhance our language on cumulative impacts too.
Mm-hmm.
Brad, can I comment?
Sure.
So obviously, you know, I do work in all, you know, a lot of the towns. So what Barnstable did, they put together a very comprehensive package. And yes, what they did was, what their reg state is, they gave a habitat value, and they have a map, and they the draft requirements are based on their shellfish assessment. I'm not even sure if you need to do a shellfish survey for a new dock there, because they've already kind of done all the work. In a poor habitat area, you can have as little as a foot of water at low tide, at least below the motor. And then on their high value sites, they want you know, upwards of 2.5 to 3 feet, sometimes below the motor. So their regs are specifically, their depth requirements are specifically rated on the value of the habitat where they are. And Heinz could probably help you with that. Now, the other way, Dennis went, I was part of this discussion when they changed their bylaw. So everybody was spending $1,000 for shellfish surveys. And in the end, we asked them, so what are you really doing with the data? It's like, we know there's shellfish there, we design against it. So why are we doing these shellfish surveys? And what they came up with was for each project, you know, the shellfish warden provides input. They do have the 3 foot at low tide requirement, but they don't require a shellfish survey anymore. What they did was they came up with a grid, a spreadsheet for the mitigation. And I helped them develop that. And it for instance, if you have decking, then it's a mitigation value of 1. But if you have grading, it goes to 0.5. And it's based solely on the square footage of the structure, $6.70 a square foot, which was the estimate of what it costs to seed a square foot of habitat, either there or somewhere else. So it just goes by the square footage of your float. In a way, it's kind of simple. And I can tell you that the average mitigation for an average dock is about $2,500. Not the $6,000 that you guys charge, but it's I don't know. It kind of goes by, the bigger the dock, the more you have to pay, which seems fair. Kelly from Yarmouth, they were struggling with requirements as well because they wanted like 3 or 4 foot square plots. And by the time you put them 10 feet apart, you're practically digging up the entire beach because there's only 2 feet in between. So I think they lowered it to, I think it's 2 by 2. They didn't, I don't know that they have a depth yet, but I could see going like 2 by 2 by a foot deep. That gives you the area, so you get a representative, you're not punching a hole, you know, and then you want to get the depth to get the shellfish that are there. And Mashpee, if you do a shellfish survey, they actually require you to do them. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not Mashpee. Wareham requires you to do an eelgrass survey, and it has to be done in the summer. So if you want to permit a dock in the winter and you haven't done that survey in the summer, you're out of luck. You got to wait. So you could specify when these shellfish surveys need to be done too. I mean, you know, it takes a year to get the permit. So anyway, those are my 3 thoughts on those.
Interesting. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Mark. You've probably seen as much of this as anybody, so
Yeah.
that is helpful. And some of the feedback I got on Barnstable was that the fellow who worked in this felt it was a little qualitative, you know, that it's kind of done by consensus. And but it's interesting. There's definitely different approaches, and I'm excited about this chance to, you know, improve things for us. So, any other thoughts, Carolyn? Okay. Ernie, you're up.
Yeah, I read through your suggestions, Brad, and there's a lot of very good points in there, a lot of good thinking that went into that. That's going to help us, I think, going forward. You know, when I'm thinking back, I can't remember when we last looked at some of the other towns. One other town that, but it struck me that there was one that's in a shellfish. It just had a statement that if Cabot, there's no dock allowed. You know, I listened to a lot of what's been said as far as mitigation and all that sort of thing, and I keep going back to comments you brought up, Brad, whenever we have these discussions, is how you can mitigate all you want, but sooner or later you run out of shellfish habitats and no place to mitigate. I mean, you know, so I think that we need to be more concerned about mapped shellfish habitats than coming up with plans to allow docks in any area so long as you mitigate for whatever the structure is. I'm not sure that's the answer, because I think it's a short-term solution, but I don't think it's a long-term viable alternative, really, from my perspective. So I don't know. I mean, I thought our regs originally said if the dock is proposed to go in a mapped shellfish habitat, then you need to get a variance. And I think we've just moved so far. We just, as you put in your memo too, Brad, that, you know, all the applications we've entertained in the last years, you know, we've maybe declined 1, and we just find reason for a variance come hell or high water. And I don't think that's necessarily the right approach either. So, you know, I'm all in favor of coming up with some regulations on this stuff. But once we do, I think they have to be reasonable. I think we have to adhere to them. And I think we should make them ironclad where we don't grant variances to them. I'm sure Chatham with their moratorium doesn't allow docks. You know, if you come in with a request for a variance to their moratorium, I suspect you're probably going to get shown the door. So that's my thinking on it. You know, and I do think strongly that you know, there is a big difference between tidal docks. So we got to make sure we have that distinction here as well. But with respect to tidal docks, I think we've got to really come up some hard rules. Once we do, I think we've really got to stick to them and not have wait for variances any longer.
You're breaking up
that's
a
all.
little bit,
Thanks.
Ernie. Yeah, you were breaking up at the end. I think I caught most of it, but no, thank you. And yeah, you know me, I've just felt for a long time that mitigation doesn't really overcome habitat degradation, and so I've been concerned about that easy way out for a long time. So, all right, Jim, you're up.
Yeah, I agree with Ernie's thoughts about the mitigation. I really see very little value in the shellfish mitigation if the habitat is being degraded. It's if the habitat is there, we don't need the shellfish mitigation if the habitat's healthy. And if it's not healthy, the mitigation doesn't make much difference in the long run. And I also agree that I think we've gotten way too caught up with these shellfish surveys. The bylaw doesn't mention it's about habitat. It actually says even if there's no shellfish there, if there's just fragments of shellfish, then it's shellfish habitat, and that docks are prohibited. The bylaw is really very clear. It's just that it's been ignored consistently for the past several years. So I do feel like we have to reconsider these regulations, and I'm in favor of something much more straightforward, such as a town-wide 200-foot setback, or possibly a moratorium in Herring River. I feel like if a dock goes in every 75 feet or so in the Herring River, I mean, we've effectively turned the Herring River into a marina. And you can see examples of this. Look at Oyster River and Chatham, or several other rivers on the mid-upper Cape. It's just a complete change to the river, to the habitat, to the navigational issues and everything. And I feel like we have a responsibility to prevent that in Herring River, and looking forward to hopefully getting these regulations tightened up so we can avoid endless discussions about shellfish surveys, and to just have some straightforward regulations that'll be easy to adhere to. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you, Jim. Let me ask Amy a procedural question. So these regs, they can be approved in-house, or do they have to go to public hearing?
Regulations are at a publicly advertised hearing.
Okay.
Bylaw changes. So if you go to our bylaw instead, any changes to those have to be town meeting.
Okay.
And I would say something such as a moratorium would definitely be, a bylaw change. And I have to look, a lot of for docks and piers, I believe that most of our, and I'm not looking at it, honestly, most of our regs are in the bylaw. The regs do extrapolate a little bit more out of there, but we have pretty specific language in our bylaw where we might not for other, buffer zone type projects, which we talk about more things in the regulations there and have kind of a general bylaw for a lot of that stuff. But we're pretty specific in the water dependent structures bylaw about things like the 2.5 feet of depth, 80 feet length, and things like that. So most of this stuff is, I'm guessing, going to have to be a bylaw change, which is town meeting.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. I agree. Certainly, if we say certain areas we don't want any more docks, that it went that way with Pleasant Bay quite a while ago.
Yeah. And something, I mean, if you don't mind, Brad, Jim, are you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Jim was done.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, didn't want to interrupt. We rely on the state and town map shellfish maps. Our shellfish maps in the town, if we're going to rely on them at all, we need to discuss with Heinz. I think redoing them. I've been here almost 10 years, and I know they haven't been redone. And we need to figure out were those maps created because of where shellfish seeding takes place by the town? Or were those maps created by looking at habitat? Or are you seeding in these locations because you know it's good habitat, you know, a marriage of the two? So I think, you know, if you discount shellfish surveys, and I agree, we spend way too much time arguing the intricacies of shellfish surveys. You know, if you're going to say, well, this is a mapped area, we have to make sure we have maps that will hold up.
No, it's a good idea, and I think, yeah, we could find that out from Heinz, and the way we choose to, you know, change the bylaw might depend on how we need to interact with the mapping. You know, maybe we rely on it more, maybe we rely on it less. You know, right now our bylaw is pretty specific what we're supposed to do, and, you know, it's really not happening. But I like having some greater level of detail. You know, clearly if you've got a place where it's all silt and it's protected, you don't have a lot of current, and you can fit a dock in, then that place shouldn't be hampered from having a dock.
You're probably going to see that next meeting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's something, you know, worth considering. But, you know, there is some beauty to what Chatham did. They made it simple. They felt that their shellfish industry was really important to the town, and they felt there were impacts occurring, and they said, okay, we're not going to have any more. So it is an interesting approach. So, all right, well, I think,
Brad, just
yes,
just one question, just out of curiosity. So is that ban still in effect in Chatham?
yes.
Yep.
Because that's interesting. As I was listening to everybody, you know, keep repeating that. I saw one put in on Oyster River this year.
Rebuild, maybe?
No, there was nothing there. It was a monopiled dock, and maybe it's illegal because the day I saw it being done, these two guys were really tearing the heck out of the marsh grass, putting it in.
I think Mark might have an answer for us.
That was my project. I have two those are elevated walkways. It's a monopile, all fiberglass, grading, even the beams are fiberglass, everything. They only go to the edge of the marsh. They're not allowed to extend beyond the edge of the marsh, because after that, they're considered a dock. So they are specifically for passage over the marsh, not through it. And then they have ladders at the end. I had come up with all kinds of different flip up stairs and all kinds of things. But and then I just got approved 320 feet of walkway in the spring. I got 320 feet of walkway approved in Chatham. 160 feet is through the BVW, and that's permanent. And the other 160 feet is over salt marsh, and that's temporary.
Okay. Oh, thank you for, again, the day that I saw it, they were working on it, and I don't think I had gone out there since, you know, so, I mean, it was like in the fall, I think.
Yeah, they specify the use of marsh maps, and sometimes they use them and sometimes they don't. But the marsh bounces back right away, because once the walkway's put in, nobody walks on it anymore. And you'll see that, and I have a study that I did myself for those walkways, and you guys will see that soon. I guess only one last comment from me. The moratoriums that they put on Chatham was done through the zoning bylaw, but I got to tell you, it instantly added $1 million to anybody who had a dock, even if it was a piece of crap. And you can talk to a realtor in Chatham. So I'm not, you know, I agree with Brad in saying that if they're sited in places properly and they're designed properly, then you're not degrading the habitat and everybody can get along. But to completely refuse them, you're going to see, well, you're going to see people like Turner very, very happy, and you're going to see other people going, well, what are you doing, you know? So you'll hand everybody in town $1 million for their property if you do that. And that's probably not the way to go. My belief has always been that the regulations are in place so that you can do work, not so you can't. And I think if you look at the regulations on how we can prohibit something, I'm sorry, but I think my opinion is we're looking at them the wrong way. We want to craft the regulations so that we can do work and protect the resource area. And we're both, I'm on the same side of you in that regard. So that's all. I'm done.
Thanks, Mark. You've always been given valuable contributions to this discussion. I think in terms of the impacts of docks, you and I are a little bit off because I just think that, I haven't seen a dock that doesn't have impacts. It's just a question of whether it's acceptable and whether it can be really minimized. And, you can see some docks in the fine sediments in Wichita Harbor, and you can say, okay, that dock is having minor impacts. But either way, it's a good discussion. And is everybody okay with what I'm suggesting for a process? Because I have no problem if somebody else wants to, craft their own, ideas. It can be a joint venture. I feel like I've been working on this concept for quite a while, so I really want to try to get ahead of steam going and try to get something that we can review at the next quiet meeting and maybe move something forward. Any other thoughts on that approach?
I just have one comment. If you're looking for a bylaw change, usually bylaw revisions, or if we have a Maytown meeting, which hopefully we will, those are usually due in February.
Okay.
Just to give you a time frame.
Yep. I think I'm off for the next 2 weeks from work, and I'm going to just commit to getting my PowerPoint done. And then hopefully I can also summarize the other towns' regulations and then get that to you guys. And I don't think I'm going to, pose a preferred alternative at this point. I'm just going to, pose a couple different options. I've already mentioned them, and then we can have a good discussion on it and advertise it. And then hopefully, I think we should try to get something, approved to move forward by February, and maybe even a second meeting in January. Is that
Yeah, I was going to say we can add a discussion meeting, a prep meeting sometime in January. If we don't have time, we're probably not going to have time during our regular hearings. So if people can commit to a third January meeting, we can do that.
Let me ask you about waterways, Amy. I haven't had a lot of discussion with those guys. I'm not seeing anybody now that I'm squirreled away in my basement. And so I know they're not meeting that often. What do you think? I guess get whatever we have, get it to them early maybe, and say, hey, do you guys want to participate? But I don't know about trying to set up a joint meeting.
I mean, we can try. So they are meeting. They have more members now, I believe. We had a few people went off. We have a few more members. I think they are meeting monthly. I mean, I would definitely want to give, especially because there's new members who weren't part of the discussion last year. I definitely want, we wouldn't want to go into town meeting without at least having the, giving them the option to meet and review and comment. With the comments they had last time, we weren't seeing eye to eye, but at least you could say, well, we met. Definitely don't want to go into town meeting, one, being in opposition, and two, not giving them the opportunity to weigh in. So
yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think that whenever I get my draft available, we to them and say, hey, let's maybe have an opportunity to discuss it on a Zoom meeting. And just to recant that last meeting, I don't mind being frank on this. I think they were really hoping to find a way to make it easier to dredge some of these areas, and that our dock and pier regulation changes might dovetail with that interest. And I think that there are locations where that makes sense. But I think I was also clear with them that I wasn't interested in rolling back protections to these resource areas. So, can we come together on that one? You want to dredge the northwest corner of Wichita Harbor? I don't see a problem with that. And if it helps out docks, that's fine. But it's got to really come with, I think, a sharper focus to how we handle dock and piers. So, but I would like to, you know, I agree. We have to have some, maybe not consensus, but some agreement, you know, with Waterways and the Department of Natural Resources on how we're going forward with this.
I agree. Having you guys, the two different boards disagree isn't progress. You know, somehow you guys have to get on the same page so that they can support you and you can support them.
Yeah, it won't look good on town meeting floor if they're speaking against it, so.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's, but I think, you know, we also want to improve our regulations. I think you heard several members speak tonight that things haven't been working great. And so we can make changes as regulations, you know, things like, you know, water depth at mean low water. We can just do that. And so, you know, I'm pretty determined not to let a year go by without progress. And, you know, if somebody wants to stall the you know, public meeting approach, then, you know, we can still make some progress other ways.
Right.
So.
Just check about the depth at mean low. That might also be in the bylaw. So if it's in the bylaw, you can't make change it. And so I can always send you both the link to the town bylaw for water dependent structures, and obviously you have the regulations, but
Yeah, I can look that up too. So
there's a lot of crossover for that for water dependent structures.
Yeah. Yep. What was that, Mark?
I'm happy to make myself available. I mean, because I work on all these different towns, I have like 13 personalities. So I'm happy to help you, you know, sift through the regs and give you opinions from my side as far as what, you know, how the changes might affect something else going down the road. So I'm happy to do that offline with you. Amy's got my phone number. You know, just call me.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'll go through, and I think it's a good idea for certain town questions, because I have called other towns where I have a contact, but I don't have contacts with every town.
Right.
So.
Well, I've worked in most of them, so and I do all this pretty currently, so I'm happy to help you that way.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks for the offer.
You're welcome.
All right. What else do we have under discussion tonight? Or any follow-up comments from anybody on this topic? Okay. Well, I appreciate thinking about this. Not take so long with the PowerPoint summary. All right, Amy, what else should we do tonight on the discussion? Well, you're muted, Amy.
All right. I don't have anything else under discussion. It's actually getting really late. I didn't really realize that. It is snowing outside.
Yeah, I know.
I would say I'm not ready to recommend the minutes for you yet. We need to work on, it just seems a little bit jumpy to me when I'm reading that. Well, actually, hold on. Maybe I'm reading them I was reading them in my folder, but maybe the ones that were put, do you have minutes in Dropbox?
I didn't see any in Dropbox, Amy.
No.
Okay, never mind. So they're not for your digestion yet. Nikki had mentioned that she wasn't completely done with them. She wanted to make full sentences and not just kind of her notes. So I apologize. I was looking on my drive for the minutes, and I was like, oh, these don't look quite ready yet. So disregard that. And
All
no,
right.
I would say, I mean, it's late anyways, but might, you know, be nice to adjourn a little bit earlier than normal.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have your Christmas cookies again, huh?
Oh yeah, I was like, who am I gonna, I'm not even, my parents are coming here, but obviously it's just them coming, and I'm like, who am I gonna make my Christmas cookies for this year?
I know.
Maybe a little elf will have to put some in your mailboxes.
Well, you know, no chance to go out for a drink at, you know, a local place, and the cookies, it's tough. Zoom is not a great replacement for all that.
No.
Or GoToMeeting, I guess. I have
Yeah.
so many different forums that I call into. It drives me crazy. So, but yeah, thank you all. I think just it's a great commission. I think we have great members, and you guys bring a lot to the table, and Amy brings so much. So it really is a nice group right now, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all. Any other thoughts?
Thank you. No, just everybody have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Right.
Thank you. Last time we meet.
Happy holidays.
We gotta adjourn now, but don't go yet.
Oh, that's right. Okay. All right, then I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor say aye, starting with Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn. Ernie.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Brad Chase. Aye as well, and I wish you a Merry Christmas. So,
All right,
folks,
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.